Mr. Chairman, you did have a couple of items of note there going to City Council. You had an item being Ordinance 4408, which was an ordinance to rezone property stated as 1221 East End Street. This was going forward on second consideration. It was asked to be rezoned from an R20 to an RS6. That request was denied at second reading. You also had an additional item, which is Ordinance 4410, which is the request to zone a property that will come up later as annexation in council's agenda, which is at the corner of Trotwood and Foster Lane. That particular request is to annex the property with a zoning of Rs10, which will then convert over to the CD3, as we discussed at study session, and that was approved on first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Keltner. Next, item 5, approval of the minutes. Each person should have a copy. Last month's meeting was broken into two meeting sessions, so you should have both copies of the meeting minutes from there. Hope everyone's had a chance to review those.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? We'll call the vote.
Mr. Hutto.
Aye.
Mr. McBroom.
Aye.
Mayor Mulder.
Aye.
Mr. Pace. Mr. Goetz.
Aye. Minutes are approved. Next, item 6, review of bonds and letters of credit.
Thank you. All letters of credit are in order.
Thank you, Mr. Harper. Next item on our agenda is the consent items. We have several items on here. Item 22-0136, 22-0177, 22-0168, 22-0162, 22-0164, 22-0167, and 22-0173, 22-0175, 22-0181, and 22-0172. We discussed several of these items, I believe, at the study session. Several of these were already in the consent items, and several were in discussion items that I did request staff to go ahead because of just no real discussions to move up into the consent items. If there's any particular one item in here or any ones, multiple ones that need to be pulled out, please let us know. Seeing none, I'll make a motion to approve the consent items subject to technical comments, staff comments.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Mr. Hutto.
Aye.
Mr. McBroom.
Aye.
Mayor Mulder.
Aye.
Mr. Pace. Mr. Goetz.
Aye. Consent items have passed. Discussion items tonight is going to bring us to first items 22-0069, which is 6150 Trotwood Avenue at Old Zion Road. Annexation, plan of services, comprehensive plan amendment, rezoning, preliminary PUD master plan request from Andrew Etheridge. With, go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So this was a deferral item from your previous month. And to remind you, as we keep going forward through tonight's agenda, as we discussed last week, certain items will be under your previous ordinance 3638. Some of these items will actually be under your current provisions under ordinance 4400. This one is going to be under your previous code for review, which is ordinance 3638. Just to recap what was presented last week, the comprehensive plan change in this particular project that was initially requested has been removed, subject to they have removed the townhomes from the particular request. So a suburban neighborhood does support the RS6 base zoning district that's being requested. The RM1 is no longer needed in order to have the townhomes. So all single family on that with regards to the acreage of approximately 415 acres there. We did include in your staff report some of the summary of changes with regards to from the previous submittal that we went through last week. Those are still relevant today, with the exception of we did have clarification on the access street connection to Ridley Park. we did verify that was still going to be there. In the end, the unit count did stay the same since your deferral. The unit count is still 981 for this particular project. All traffic impact studies, improvement requests are still relevant and still be required should this move forward. In your staff report, there are the review criteria for the particular request of this project that regards to the zoning map amendment as well as the rezoning of the property itself. Entertain any questions if you may have of staff.
Don't have any at the moment. It's been brought to my attention on this particular item that there may be one spokesperson in lieu of the 3 minutes. We may be granting more time to just one spokesperson on this. I believe it's Mr. Douglas Chapman, and if everybody is in agreement with that, then, upon the completion of Mr. Chapman's presentation, we'll close the public comments on this particular item. Seeing no objections in the, you'd like to add to it?
Yes, sir.
We have one addition to that. Mr. Chapman.
May I approach to hand something out briefly?
Yes, I believe it's over here to Melissa, please.
Thank you for the time today. I appreciate y'all letting me speak with y'all today. Again, my name is Douglas Chapman, 6415 Yateman Lane, Columbia, Tennessee. And I just want to reiterate, I am here in my individual capacity as a neighbor who lives in Ashwood Manor, not in my official capacity as what I do for work. I do want to start by saying I appreciate the developers who are here. After the last meeting, I reached out to them. We talked a little bit. We were able to schedule a video meeting to be able to sit down and talk with them. We did that yesterday, and I do feel that they listened to what was asked of them from last time. I do feel like that ultimately when they do build something, it's going to be a quality product. We're not quite on the same page with them at this point in time about what we think that quality product might need to be, but this is where I'd like to share with y'all. I've given y'all a handout here. It's a few pages. I was going to try to have a visual up here for everybody to be able to see, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get that scheduled ahead of time. Again, as what was stated previously, this is a 981 unit development. That's what it was previously with townhomes. That's what it has remained here on this property. If we've got, I see a screen up there. If we've got someone who can do USB to be able to put something up, I've got one right here.
I'm not sure. Kevin, do you know if we have any abilities to put USB in?
It's PDF, Word, PowerPoint, just about anything you could want to put on it. While they're pulling that up. So I do appreciate the developers for what they have done, but the number is still way too large. On the second page that you have, it talks about that there's 673 lots. Those are the highest number. These are 50-foot wide lots. They're 1/7 of an acre. They're 1/5 of an acre are the next largest, and 1/4 acre, 97 lots. The largest lots that they moved up to are about 1/2 an acre, which consent to about 10 acres of the overall development property. This is a little bit over a 400-acre property. When you look at how much acreage is actually on per plat that's there, it is actually about 165 per what they have right now. Is that? All right, so that's the second one. I've got on the bottom right-hand side the page numbers on there if that helps to be able to go to that one. So on here, again, just reiterates the fact that it's a lot of little properties that are out there, and it's just not what Columbia or this area needs. Move on to page 3, please. All right, just to reiterate from where we were from the last time, Ashwood Manor, we are 40 homes, 4 of which are already in the city limits. 22 homes are on Old Zion Road. I'm sorry, Touch Old Zion, the development here. When you look at that, those average homes are about 3,200 square feet and 1.9 acres, 1.09 acres. When this whole property gets brought in by the city, Ashwood Manor is basically going to be an island except for about a half acre on the back end of someone's property. So we will be almost completely engulfed by this property. We'll go ahead and move on to page 4. On this, the development, I appreciate they've got this where they're going to show us how long it's going to take to get through this whole process. I know it doesn't all happen overnight, but this is a 10-year plus project. That's going to be 10 years of construction, noise, and congestion around me. I have a 1-year-old right now. She's going to be 11 when this is all done. I have a 9-year-old. He's going to be out of the house when this is all done. This is a long-term impact for our neighborhood, plus everybody who lives up and down Trotwood Avenue on here. You've got the 3 different phases that are there, and just want to point out the fact that this is really, it's a decision that's made here in a relatively short amount of time, and when it goes back before the city, but this is a 10-year impact that we're going to have on our daily lives if this goes through as done. Go ahead and move on to page 5. Concerns of Ashwood Manor as a neighborhood. The direct access between Yateman Lane and Old Zion. We oppose that. I don't think the developers want that. I think the city has been pushing for it, and I think maybe there's been asked to be a gate on there, but we don't want that. We're in the county, we want to stay that way. Additionally, to the negative effects, we have 981 homes on out there. It's going to have effect with the traffic flow on Trotwood Avenue all the way from James Campbell out to Zion Lane. Right now, it backs up to James Campbell when I try to come home from work, let alone put about 1,000 houses on there on top of the other developments that are going. That's going to be bad for everybody. It's going to be a burden on the school system. It's also going to be a massive change to the overall character as laid out in Connect Columbia, which includes but not limited to the smaller, being way smaller than 1 acres that were used there right now. As I said earlier at the last meeting, the PUD does not comply with City Zoning Code 7.2, which contemplates the PUDs that are developed along Mount Pleasant Pike and also with Connect Columbia. All the property around Ashwood Manor would be pretty much in the city. If we can move on to the next one, please. Page 6. When I talked about 7.2 last time, I was talking about one of the things that was on there that talked about any tree greater than 8 inches in diameter is not to be cut down. What you have on here is an outline of pretty much all the areas that are wooded here. I drive by it every day. Those are big trees all the way around. I submit to you and I believe that 7.2 is the one that's in favor that needs to be done on here because of the location. All these areas in blue are areas that I submit cannot be developed on unless they can work around trees that are much smaller than 8.5 inches in diameter. We'll go ahead and move on to number 7. Additionally, per that code, there's to be between a 100 to a 300-foot buffer off of Trotwood Avenue, depending on where the closest parking is, and whether that's on the front side facing towards Trotwood Avenue or on the back side of buildings covered away from Trotwood Avenue. So it's going to have a big area there where property, depending on where the houses are and where the cars are, how far back that can go. For this example, that's a 300-foot buffer on there, just for demonstration purposes only. Go on to page 8, please. We as a community got together and we talked about what would we like to see on here. And ideally, what we'd like to see is to follow that zoning code 7.2, not cutting down those trees greater than 8 inches in diameter. Have that setback on Trotwood be back to 100 to 300 feet, depending on the parking on there. Again, with 7.2, have minimal grading on the sloping of the land. Additionally, we would ideally like to have the same setback boundary around Ashwood Manor as whatever is facing Trotwood. We would like to completely remain rural, R40 lots of an acre or larger. Protect the historic houses on the property where it cannot be torn down, and have there be no connection between Old Zion, PUD, and Yateman Lane. That's what we would say ideally, so that's where we started off as a neighborhood talking about. Move on to the next page. On this page 9, so this, to give an example, this is all the areas that would be the setbacks, the area buffering around around our properties. The purple area that's on there is the area where the historic home is. And again, all the blue areas, the areas where all the trees are that I've submit to you cannot be built upon. So when you look at what's left, that's a relatively small amount of property on this 400 acres that are there, roughly 400 acres. Page 10, please. Now, this is what we said we'd like. Now, we realize that there's some discussion about whether or not that 7.2 is still applicable. I have to say that it is because these developers came in underneath the old zoning regulations, and I do believe that that is there. But they bought the property. They're going to want to develop it. We've had a good meeting with them. So we want to go in and say, what can we do to try to be good stewards of our neighbors who are to be there, who are going to be coming? So what is the solution that's equitable to all residents off of Trotwood Avenue between James Campbell and Zion Lane, and also to those who are involved with the Old Zion PUD, and also create a beautiful front porch entering into Columbia from Trotwood, enhances and showcases the crown jewel park of Columbia, the Ridley Sports Complex. Next page, please. This is what we would like to propose. I think y'all heard last week from the developers what they are going to have. Some of the homes are being fed from the front, some are being fed from the back. The main thing I'd like to point out here, we've got some burgundy and we've got some red on there. What we would like to propose, the red and the burgundy are all areas that are going to be big visible areas facing Trotwood, the main area coming into the park. The area that abuts over on Zion Lane, and the areas that go and abut our property over on Ashwood Manor. These are all areas that we would like to propose would be 1 acre lots. Now, I don't know exactly how many acres, how many lots that's going to be, and trying to figure out a way to be fair to the developer. What we would like to propose is that those, whatever the volume of those acres lots are, to have that be the same amount that the smallest properties could be. So the more bigger properties they do, the smaller lots they can do. And what we would like to propose, that the smallest lots be out there, be a 10,000 square foot, 75-foot wide lots. But again, those can be no more acreage-wise than what the 1 acre lots combined to be. In between those two, we're going to have some areas that are there. They're going to have to be infilled as well. We would propose that there would be a 30,000 square foot lot with a 125-foot wide minimum lot, and a 20,000 square foot with a 100-foot minimum lot. And basically, those kind of even out between the two. So if the developer wants to build a whole bunch of 150-foot lots, they can build a whole lot more of the smaller properties out there. If they want to do some really wide acre properties that aren't very deep and have fewer of them, it's going to be fewer of the smallest properties that are there. To me, this was a way that seemed that it could be equitable, that would be there to allow them to be able to have that beautiful presentation that's there, to be that visible sign coming into the city and coming through to the park and to the neighbors, but also give them a vehicle to be able to balance out what has been there. Because everything so far has been about 90–80% just tiny, tiny lots. We're trying to find a way to work with them to be able to do that. Additionally, we'd also ask for the historic home to be preserved, to have it be done in a way where it's not going to be torn down, or have something done with it in the future. You know, there's been too many historic homes here in Murray County torn down, and we need to find a way to be able to protect them. This is one that's there. This whole process is happening because the property that land was on was sold. Additionally, as the first thing that got all this whole ball rolling is we don't want any connection out there to Trotwood Avenue, between Yateman Lane and to this property. I know what's being proposed right now is there to be 2 different gates out there. Well, I also say to you that, you know, if we put 2 gates out there right now, at some point in time in the future, someone's going to want those gates opened up. Who's going to be the authority to be able to go through and say, who does that? Does that come back before this board? Does it go to the city commission? Or the city commission? Does it go through and just someone arbitrarily within the city say, well, let's just go ahead and pull them now? The builder doesn't want it. We don't want it. I understand that there's Connect Columbia to try to put the neighborhoods together. But as I showed earlier, we're not in Columbia. We're in the county. Mr. Boshears, the road superintendent, says this, we can't connect here. That can't be a thoroughfare based off of what we have. Put some houses across the back end of that back into the property there on Zion Lane, and don't have it any way that it can connect over to us. I'm very glad to answer any questions that y'all might have, and again, I also, and thank you, the last page on there. When we're asking for things, might as well ask for them while we're at it. Purple, we've got several different ways to go in and out of the property here. What I'd like to point out is once that purple, which is the main thoroughfare, drag in and out of the property, the one where we're saying that needs to have the acre lots on both sides of that, once that's built and there's a light out there, which is my understanding of the plan, everybody who's going to be going into Columbia is going to be going farther away from Columbia to get to that light and going in. And everybody who's trying to turn right and go out the opposite way is going to be coming out there where they can right now normally, and they're going to be going opposite directions out there and causing traffic there on Trotwood. And you see how far it is to be able to get back out in Old Zion Lane. I know that the city has tried to do this before with trying to get some kind of easement over the railroad tracks. And I know there was an issue with that. Why not ask to see if we could try to be able to build that in with this one, to see if we can get something done with TDOT, with the bypass there, and also with the railroad, to be able to have easy access there to the bypass. That would be much better for everybody who's coming in and out, going to those tournaments, and much easier for so many of the residents who are there. It might seem like to me that, or it seemed like that we're just trying to beat up the developers that are here, and that's not the case at all. Like I said earlier, I think once whatever they're going to build is built, it's going to be a good product. I've left the meeting with them feeling that's the case. I think they have a good heart and good intention for what they're trying to do. But we're going to be the ones who are stuck with it for the next 10 years, and the ones who are going to have those people be our neighbors. We want them to have a good product, a good place to live, a good place to call home, and we submit to you having 981 houses out there, or home units, is way too much. I don't know how many units or how many this will come to when we go through what we're proposing here. A lot of it will depend on how the developer might go through and draw some of those lines for the acre lots. But I think this is a fair and equitable way to have large lots, small lots, medium-sized lots, and have the size balance each other out, as opposed to being so skewed one way towards the tiny and the smallest lots that they can be. So I'm glad to answer any questions that anybody might have. And I'm sorry, I think there's probably some misspellings in there. I was working on this late last night.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it so much. I believe Mr. Howard was the other one with the hand up. Thank you, sir.
Excuse me, are there any handouts?
I'm sorry.
I brought kids, they have them all. I'm glad to provide anybody one that they would like it.
Mr. Howard.
Good afternoon, Chairman Goetz and members of the Planning Commission. My name is Gabe Howard. I live at 1270 Cranford Hollow Road. I'm proud to represent the people of District 8 as their new county commissioner. I hope to work with this body and the City Council on a united front to make decisions that are best for our community long term. I'm not originally from Murray County, and I'm proud to now call it home. And I'm proud of the community that we have. I'm coming to you today with regard to the multiple proposed developments, including Trotwood, Rock Springs Phase 2 on the agenda. The exponential growth here is alarming and concerning. While I think we should all be proud that we're part of a community that is growing and that people want to come to, raise a family, we need to do this the right way. By continually approving these massive developments, we're stripped from our ability to plan for this growth and come up with creative ways that growth can pay for growth. When listening to Mr. Donnie Bushiers back in June talk about how developers pay their share of infrastructure upgrades, impact to systems on the wastewater side, it was hopefully a revelation that to some that while the city has the opportunity to have growth pay for growth, Murray County government and Murray County public school system does not have that luxury. Last month, we had for the first time ever a developer that offered a voluntary impact fee of $4,500 for education. While that should be applaudable, and they also offered land, which is my understanding that was in a sinkhole area, which should be looked at. While this voluntary impact fee is applaudable, we must look ahead and get impact fees at the state legislative body. This next commission will work hard to make sure that that happens. On behalf of the Preserve Murray Initiative, I urge you to recommend a denial of any development plan that does not fit the Connect Columbia Comprehensive Plan without upzoning, changing zoning, or any development that changes our community members' quality of life, and any development that is creating a suburban sprawl and taken away from our beautiful Murray County countryside. This growth is truly unsustainable. We believe growth should pay for growth, preserve the quality of life, and make our schools and environment better. This uncontrolled, unsustainable growth will do none of these. With regard to schools, I want to continually remind this body that schools must be planned for and could take 3 to 5 years to build. Today, there is no additional funding available to build the schools for the 15,000 doors that are already approved. I learned today that our Superintendent of Operations, Mr. Perryman, has been driving a school bus to help out our school system. We have over 100 vacancies in the school system. This is what uncontrolled growth looks like. In regards to water, we should be concerned. A little over a month ago, Columbia Power and Water System came close to hitting its daily capacity of 16 million gallons per day. While I understand we look at averages, we also must plan on our worst day. What would have happened if Ultium Sales was online with water usage of 1 to 1.8 million gallons per day? We know that CPWS is working hard to secure an additional water intake and treatment facility, neither of which have permits, funding, utility easements, environmental studies, etc. There's a much larger conversation of the sustainability of the Duck River that we must look at. I believe this community is important to each and every one of you in this room, as I know that several of you grew up here and love this community. Thank you for your time. I look forward to working with this body.
Thank you, Mr. Howard. That closes the public comments on the Trotwood Old Zion development. Yeah, as the applicant is here, present, I believe, is correct? Yeah. I know we had you guys at the study session last week, but, please feel free, as we weren't, completely there, reiterate, the discussion and any concerns you heard here tonight as well, so.
Good evening, Chairman, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. My name is Scotty Bernick. I'm a landscape architect with Reagan Smith. Here with me is Andrew Ethridge with Willow Branch Homes. And I guess in regards to respect everybody's time and a long agenda, we wanted just to hit on some of the key changes, some of the key topics that we discussed. That said, we're available for questions at the end of this, and would love an opportunity to go into depth. As noted, we are not requesting a land use amendment by nature of removing the townhomes. You heard some discussions about land use amendment. That's not being requested at this time. I wanted to also note the development plan. The zoning and with the PUD that's shown is compliant with the land use policy that's in place. So again, I heard a few things tonight about non-consistencies, and I would respectfully disagree. The land use policy is a plan put together with community input that has recommended zoning districts. This specific plan is a PUD. It has some key details, and by nature of some design qualities, it's being presented with the PUD, but the underlying zoning is absolutely consistent with the land use policy that's in place. The density, with the new zoning ordinance coming on too, we've heard a little bit about the old code versus the new code. If you were comparably looking at a similar, let's say, a CD3 of the new zoning code, this is less dense than that would allow sort of by right. So again, when we hear, sometimes I hear small lots and I hear density, and there's some aspects to this type of development. So small lots doesn't always mean you get way more homes. It means you have a development, you're able to plan the space accordingly and benefit there. We met with the planning department and also the parks department regarding the signalized intersection at Ridley Park Drive and Trotwood. Although it's not feasible to put the signalized intersection there due to right-of-way that can't be acquired, we did work with staff in showing the signalized location in the preferred location. I also wanted to note we increased the lot sizes along Trotwood and also along the perimeter. So when you look at that's anywhere, we're showing a 100-foot buffer, but if you look at the plan, it's everywhere from 100 foot to 200 feet. So when you look at the lot sizes, you take that depth plus the actual lot depth. These are very, very sizable setbacks, and I would say maybe even greater than the adjacent Ashwood Manor development when you look at it from where a home goes to the property line. Along that, with the setbacks we're showing, we are proposing to maintain the existing vegetation around the existing development. We're also proposing an additional, when I say 25 feet, what I mean is the proposed landscape material that you would expect to find in a typically required 20-foot buffer will be added to it. So within the 100-foot buffer, you're getting the existing vegetation plus an amount that you would expect with the normal 25-foot buffer that you would require on any other project here. Although we did remove the school site from this plan, as we didn't hear back from the school system, as noted, we are offering a $4,500 per unit to be paid at closing for each house. So yeah, there's not a standard in place, but I would like to note that sort of good efforts in trying to respond to some of the things that have been noted. We are providing and building the road stub to the adjacent development. As you heard, that's a recommendation of staff. Obviously, it's a sensitive topic for the adjacent neighborhood. We are showing it as to be gated on both sides. I think we're here tonight with open ears and willing to listen to see how the commission would like or recommend for that to proceed. We've updated the amenity sketches to show and be more consistent. We've provided additional pocket parks throughout the development on the east and the west side of the site. We've been working with staff in the Parks Department to program the spaces as a whole for the needs of the community and for the needs of this development. We've added a mail kiosk and a playground on the northern portion of the site. We're providing a pedestrian connection to Ridley Park. I think one of the most notable items is that we're building and dedicating over a 2-mile, 10-foot wide paved cross-section that goes through the development and then would be dedicated back to the parks, and that's in discussion with the parks director. We are also donating over 31 acres of the very northern part of the site. That's the wooded site to the Parks Department, again, per conversations with them and willingness to take that in and wanting that to add to that special place. In closing, we're absolutely consistent with the land use policy. We've revised the plans, I think, based on every comment we heard at the work sessions in the Planning Commission to really provide a high-quality plan. This is very walkable when we hear things about suburban and things of that nature. What you're getting here is an entire neighborhood that is a big park. Every linear foot of sidewalk on the system, every part of 10-foot wide trail that wraps this system, dedication to the city. What that is it provides amenities not just for this neighborhood, but it's a good give and take, a give back to the community that gets with a project of this scale. I guess lastly, I would respectfully ask for your favorable recommendation tonight. We are here for questions at the appropriate time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone up here have any questions for the developer? We may call you forward if we have any more. Mr. Kellner, just to reiterate, we're not asking now at this point for an amendment to the comp plan. We're just asking for an annexation.
Yes, sir. So back to the basic request. There's no exceptions or variances being requested with this plan. There's no comprehensive plan amendments being requested. It is an annexation with a base zoning of RS6. And sorry, with the PUD master.
I know I say this at several meetings, Mr. Keltner, but just to confirm, because I think the developer pointed out tonight that it does conform to the land use plan, but also less dense things, RS20 of our old zoning, but RS10, RS20, RS40 also conform to that same plan, just the same as these would as well. So.
Yes, sir, that is correct. While the RS6 does comply with suburban neighborhood, there are other densities that are zoning districts that would comply with it as well.
Ms. Cutler, not to necessarily put you on the spot here, but as Mr. Chapman was leaning to on the 7.2 and the trees, the preservation of trees, is that anything you could maybe comment or elaborate on as far as, what that entails? I did read a little bit in that 7.2 about the, 8-inch diameter trees and larger being preserved, so is that anything you could maybe elaborate on for us?
Sure. So you have several sections within the PUDs that, in particular, there was one section that I believe is what's being referenced, that along certain major highways, there are additional standards inside of that. You still have the options in there to either waive those standards or increase those standards. Those standards do have certain roads. I believe there may be just confusion between Highway 43 and then 243. Staff, when first reviewed this, the main entranceway is coming off of 243. The majority of the property itself is coming into 243, so that's why it was determined 243. It didn't actually touch Highway 43, as there is separation, and the annexation does not go all the way to 43 as well. So in our mind, while it is a PUD and you can apply those standards should you wish to do so, that was not a requirement in our determination. I believe there was also some comments about notifications. We did go back and look, and we did send proper notifications to all those that should have been notified, and we do have a running list if any of those come to question.
Well, I do applaud the developer for, coming to staff last week and saying you did listen to comments about, the density and removing the townhomes and all that. I think, from my perspective, not, the number of units at 981 remaining the same to 981, the 50-foot wide lots still maintains that density. I think that maybe was overlooked from the concerns that were expressed. I did look back even into our, comprehensive plan, discussions on annexations, and it says if proposed developments abut land that is undeveloped or has low density intensity, the density and intensity of the proposed development should taper towards the periphery to provide compatibility with that pattern, and being that, those larger lots that, were referenced, also conform to that land use pattern. I think I'm going to be apt to make a motion to deny the request based on, whether several reasons, but one being the proposed changes would be consistent with the intent goals. That density, I think, could interfere with that. Also, whether the proposed changes could create substantial adverse impacts on the adjacent, area. I think that could also create an impact on them. So my motion here tonight would be to deny. So I have a motion on the table.
Too late?
Too late. I have a motion on the table. Have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
I would, Mr. Chairman, like to speak on just, I guess, the motion that's been presented, and procedurally, again, to make sure I'm clear on if the motion to deny is approved, how that would work on what their opportunities were to come back. But before I do that, I want to say, first of all, thank you to Judge Chapman, Mr. Chapman, in his capacity tonight for his comments. I thought they were well stated and helped me have a better understanding. Also, thank you to Mr. Howard as well. Congratulations on your election to the County Commission. I see that the County Mayor-elect, Sheila Budd, is also here tonight. Thank you for being here as well and expressing your concerns. There were a couple things that I heard that had been mentioned throughout, but I don't know that I've really gotten a clear answer on. And the house, the historic house, the developer didn't mention what their thought process was with the house and the concerns that have been addressed. And speaking of the concerns, again, we've had several of these, what I'll call large-scale developments come through over the last couple of years. And generally speaking, the product that comes in initially ends up looking a lot different than the product that comes in 6 months down the road. And generally speaking, that's because the developers meet with the landowners, the surrounding landowners, and they're able to have an opportunity to meet and to try to figure out whether or not they can agree, or at least agree to disagree. But either way, it's a better product after they've had those opportunities. And so now to have an opportunity to where folks are putting together a list of concerns that they've been able to meet with the developers this week to discuss Again, I think that's an example of what this commission wants to see. I think we talk a lot about smart growth. Well, smart growth is having stakeholders at the table talking about what they want to see and helping come to a better final product. With that said, I mean, I appreciate that those conversations are now ongoing. I think that in some of my conversations with some of the interested community members that I've had over the last couple of weeks, I think there is a realization that this property is ultimately going to be developed. And so we segue from that realization to let's making sure we can have the best possible development product if in fact this property is to be developed. And so from my perspective, I would like for the developers and the stakeholders to be able to continue to have those conversations so that we're not faced with the predicament months down the road where a much higher density product is coming to the table, that we're going to have to try to figure out how to whittle that down. If there is what I hope there would be is a willingness from the developers to take a look at these concerns. I mean, the chairman pointed out, I appreciate that you heard the call that we weren't really interested in townhomes right there. But the reason that we weren't interested necessarily for townhomes, at least in part, was because of the density that townhomes create. And so when you take away the townhomes but keep the same amount of density, from my perspective, that didn't accomplish what I was hoping to see with that comment. So again, I guess if the motion, and this now goes back to where I started, Mr. Keltner, the motion to deny is on the table, and if that's granted, then basically this project is denied, and they come back and they have to start all over again with really none of this to move forward on. Is that correct?
They would have the option to move forward to city council with recommendation of denial from this commission, or they can withdraw that item from moving forward to city council and then start over again under the new ordinance 4400.
Okay, well then in that case, I'm gonna just say that I'm gonna vote against the motion to deny, so that they can have an opportunity for me to make a motion to defer, so that they can have continued conversations. But I understand that if the motion to deny is granted, then their option would then be to go to city council. All right, thank you.
Any further discussion?
And just to be clear, if they had to come back under the new proposal, the developer said he felt like that allowed for more density, came in as a CD3 than what's currently under a prior zoning plan. Is that correct?
It would not necessarily be more density. The density cap for a CD3, if they choose to go CD3, is 4 per acre. That's essentially would be less than the RS6. RS6 technically is around 7 per acre, but they're nowhere close to that. But they would be capped at 4 per acre under the CD.
On that note, though, it could also be come back as a CD3L,
That is correct. Yes.
which is the larger lots as
And-
well.
Is that what you had, Mr. Rudd?
That is.
I'm operating on the assumption that a motion to defer is not appropriate when there's a motion to deny on the table. However, in second thought, I think I might want to defer or consult the city attorney. In fact, can I make a motion to defer?
A motion to defer can be made at any time. Then you have to take up the motion to defer. Then if the motion to defer is denied, then you take up the motion. Motion to defer is approved. The motion to defer pressed. The motion to defer, the chairman was correct. The motion to defer has to come from you all, not be at the request. Now, once the motion is on the table. Thank you.
All right. In that case, I do have a question for the developer. Have you seen these concerns that were presented?
No, sir. We've had about an hour conversation with Judge Chapman yesterday on the phone, and pretty much none of what we saw in the presentation came up. So,
Okay. Did you hear them tonight?
we heard them tonight.
All
Yes,
right.
sir.
After hearing them tonight, do you believe there's an opportunity for conversation and potential opportunities to not necessarily, I mean, he even pointed out that it's their sort of starting offer. Do you think there's an opportunity to where density could be lowered and there could be some of their concerns addressed in ongoing conversations?
I believe so. We're at 2.7 right now on the density. I would love to continue the conversation with them, is what I would say. Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
That answer your question?
It does, thank
Okay.
you. And for that reason, again, I think that those conversations should still have an opportunity to be had, and for this planning commission to ultimately be able to have a say for recommendation or not prior to sending it to council. So I would make a motion to defer at this time.
But what happened to the motion that we had a second?
Defer.
Motion to
Defer
defer.
Trump? Okay.
Second.
Did it seconded.
We just gotta.
So we have a second, and just on discussions of that, Mr. Keltner, what is the history, and this may be a Mr. Tischer question as well. I know this item's been here before. Has it been deferred by this board previously? Or was it deferred by the applicant at the and is that something?
I think it was deferred last month.
It was.
Correct.
But I don't know if it was, is there a number that, if it was deferred by this board, or if it was requested by the applicant? It was my question of a number.
It can only be deferred by you all. Now, you all can do that upon a request from the applicant, but you all are the ones that have to do the actual.
Is there a limitation to those deferrals, I guess is my question.
You all, there is not a limitation. You all have had a history of not allowing continuous deferral. If you choose to defer something for another month, that is your prerogative. You do not have a set number that you can only defer. It's only, you all wanted to have that as far as a standard operating procedure, and you all could do that. We need.
Gotcha.
And I think generally, Mr. Chairman, what we don't want is for the applicants to continue to ask us to defer for them and get into that habit. I mean, I know that we've refused to do that on some occasions after about 3 or 4 requests for deferrals. But I think this one, I think my request for deferral is coming because I think I see an opportunity here for the surrounding adjoining property owners to get a product that maybe they can live with and have some control in the process versus something coming through that might not be as likable as what potentially could be reached. So I'll reiterate the motion.
If we do deny it, then they can turn around and bring it back, correct?
Under the new ordinance.
The new
That's
ordinance.
correct.
And that could take how long? They couldn't submit it for next month, but they could the next month.
Right.
He can bring it back under the new ordinance, CD 3L, I think would be more out to satisfy everybody.
I'll voice my opinion. I don't want them to do the work with the deferral and come back and they still have 50-foot lot. I'm not happy with the density of the 50-foot lot. So that's why I would not be for the deferral unless I knew they were going to eliminate some of them.
So based on that, should we just call the vote on the deferral since it takes precedence and see how that lays?
And then they come.
Something you can discuss at this point is the deferral
Okay.
until you vote on.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second right now on the deferral. But we'll call the vote on that.
Mr. Hutto,
Aye.
Mr. McBroom,
No.
Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Pace,
No.
Mr. Goetz.
No. Motion to defer.
Fails, so now you vote on the underlying motion.
So the motion to deny was the underlying motion, and we'll call the vote on that.
Mr. Hutto,
No.
Mr. McBroom, Mayor Mulder,
No.
Mr. Pace, Mr. Goetz.
Aye. Request is denied. Thank you. So as I think the people in the public here today heard, the applicant would still have an opportunity to bring this to city council at next month's meeting. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes, sir.
With the motion to deny with recommendation from the board, but just want to give you guys that acknowledgement that could come to city council still next month. So that being said, I know there's a rather large crowd here tonight. I would allow the opportunity to, now that this item is over, if you want to leave, you're welcome to.
If it goes to city council, does it gotta go in this form? Can anything be changed? They take it to council.
It can be changed at city council, but city council historically send it back to you, should that come to
He could change it. I mean, he wouldn't have to start over. He could go to the city council and tell them, right?
They would, historically, they would send it back to
And
this
send it
body.
back to us.
Yes, unless it's pretty minor.
You can only lose a month. If you came back to the new one, he could redraw it to a month.
Yep. Next item tonight is going to be, let me get down there to it. Sorry, had a lot of items on there. Item 2, which is 22-0077, Rock Springs Road, Comprehensive Plan Amendment, Annexation, and Rezoning. If you are clearing the room, we'd request to go in and clear so we can go on to the next item, which is item 22-0077, Rock Springs Road. Request from Scotty Burnick for annexation with plan of services of approximately 106 acres being tax map 92, parcels 11.01 and 11.02 for rezoning to Rs10, single-family low-density residential, CD3 neighborhood character district. The applicant also requests to amend the Connect Columbia to remove the subject parcel from the Interstate Gateway District.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, so this is property directly south to the piece at the corner of Bear Creek and Columbia Rock Road there that was annexed back in 2021, and that you do have a preliminary plat on for the first phase on this agenda. This particular request is for 106 acres with the zoning designation of RS10. That the concept is showing around 209 single-family homes. Just to restate the comprehensive plan amendment, there is a special area overlay on top of the comprehensive plan for this one that would require attached housing. The applicant is not requesting to do attached housing with regards into this particular piece of property, and that is why they're requesting for the special area to be moved from this property in itself. As similar as your previous request that you saw tonight, the standards for review are located within your staff report, as well as commentary for each item.
Let me just make sure I understand what you were saying, Mr. Keltner. The request to remove it from the Interstate Gateway District is because the Interstate Gateway District would require attached housing? Like
It
townhomes?
requires a mixture of housing product types, and then it goes into details about attached housing, and which is, if you dig deep enough into it, which is actually contradictory to the actual rural countryside designation in itself. The only other option was to re-amend the rural countryside zoning to something that allowed the mixture of uses. Staff and the applicant worked together and thought the better route was just to remove it from the special area.
Similar to the way I did the one before, I have a Brendan Babcock for Rock Springs Road, I believe, on the list here tonight.
Thank you. I'm Brendan Babcock, and I live at 1814 Rock Springs Road. Appreciate this opportunity to speak with you. I've written this out just because this is an emotional issue for many and for myself as well, because it is something that's involving what one believes is a harm to the area in which we're living in and the community. And so I have written most of this out. You know, I know that others have spoken about the infrastructure and the water utilities in schools. We've talked about this, and I don't think we're prepared for that. And you know, and how we're going to deal with those things. But that is not the only thing that's going on here. We are damaging the very thing that draws many to Murray County and Columbia. People here believe they have something special. I think we are in danger of taking that something special away by all these developments. You know, very quickly, I'll point out again, because I know I once talked about the strong towns studies. And just to be succinct, basically, they point out that when we annex county property, is generally just a short-term boost. But their studies show that more organic and managed growth is the way to create a secure and well-developed town and city. They point to many towns that have shot out tendril arms into the county, and we've got a lot of those. And the ones that they've even discussed as being a faulty form of development, invariably they point out that they weaken the city in the long run, but they'll talk about one tendril arm. But when you look at our town, you know, and I'll show you this, you all know it, but you know, we've got multiple tendrils just flying out, and it seems like there's more developing all the time. And the rate and the measure sometimes that they show that there's a good correlation and a causation in towns not truly flourishing because the perimeter, well, the ratio that they've, in their study showed that we have a huge amount of perimeter on our city of Columbia for, given the amount of area, because we keep on having unincorporated areas, but we have all of these shot out tendril arms sticking out into our county and the beauty of our county, rural areas. And so this gives us a very high amount of perimeter, but very low area for the city, and that has just been shown to create a just a faulty way in which to grow your city. So, and actually and I'll just even point out, it looks like, and I am speaking for Rock Springs also here, but we have one tendril, and we keep on having additional ones. And now we're going to have a tendril, it looks like, coming down Rock Springs Road off of another tendril. And I just think that we need to give it some pause. I'm not sure why we're pushing this. I really don't, and I'm actually cutting some of the things out, but, it is against the character of our community there on Rock Springs Road. It's a rural area. It's not part of Connect Columbia, and it just doesn't fit the character of our area. And what was the, and one of the things too is that they were talking about, as a town is stretched out in the manner that this one is that there will be. They talk about that the tax revenue in those downtown areas, like an acre of downtown area, is often 20-1 what you might get from an extended, far-flung portion of the county that's been annexed. And so I think we do need to focus more on this more organic growth so that we can have a town that supports its center. Because really, when you stretch it out, there will be some people that get interested short-term in these stretched out areas, but to the harm of the downtown. And I think that then the downtown will lose something, and I think that's a special place in this state even, is our downtown Columbia. And I do think we will lose that interest to a degree, and then and then I think we could just see a decline in interest. And who knows? Maybe we're in the middle of a recession starting too. We don't even know the growth. I don't know how much is going to, how much more growth we'll have. I'm sure that we will have some, but I do want it to be smart growth. And I would like just to consider some of these things to just make this more organic. Let's pause for a little bit on this growth, because I don't think we need it right now. Why are we even, we've already doubled the homes in Columbia, from these developments, at least approved. So I just would like to see us pause with some of these and just have no more development until we see actually where the county's going, see where some of those infrastructure issues are, and just take into a little more consideration the harm that's occurring to these communities in these rural areas. I think I don't think that's being taken into consideration well enough, and I would just ask that you do. And but basically that's it. The one last thing I might say about Rock Springs Road, it's a very curvy road. With the amount that we've already had in the more northern development, the additional one, I think you'll get more people going down Rock Springs Road because it's further south, and they won't be using Bear Creek as much. And I just want people to look into these things and just see that, maybe we just need to pause and just take into consideration those people that are being affected by this.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
I believe the developer's here tonight on this one as well.
I would add, Mr. Chairman, if I can interject real quick, I failed to mention that during our study session, we did discuss the request from Murray County Highway Department to annex that portion of Rock Springs Road.
From the development entrance to Bear Creek Pike, correct?
Yes, sir.
Good evening, Chairman, Mr. Mayor, members of the commission. My name's Scotty Bernick. I'm a landscape architect with Reagan Smith. I'm here with Cliff Smith with CPS. Been before you several times on this project. I think tonight this is a good story, as we're hearing, especially concerns right before us on, density. talk a little bit about the plan as a whole. And this piece of property is right next to the interstate along our major arterial road. So when we look at land development and how the city grows, there's really good logic and really good reasoning to provide density in those cores, right? That's where your infrastructure is. That's where it's planned. Specific to this application, we are requesting an annexation. This is consistent with the city's urban growth boundary. As noted, this particular property is in the Interstate Gateway number 7 overlay. And as Paul noted, this is a specific overlay that encourages and promotes high, I'm going to call it high density, but a very high density style development pattern, meaning if you have multifamily commercial next to you, that's what's appropriate for this site. So by default, we're coming here tonight before you to request removal from the overlay and to propose a low density residential product type. Part of the logic and part of the reasoning is, although this is appropriate where I think development should occur, we're very respectfully looking at the transition between the commercial center, the multifamily, the townhomes directly to our north. We have a rural property directly to the west. And this is, again, a very responsible transition when you go from those type of elements from a density and from a form, building form, heights and things of that nature. So I think this really fits well and addresses that. You know, also as noted, we came in, this is under the old zoning ordinance. However, this is not a PUD, this is different. This would then fall into the new zoning regulations, the regulations that the city spent a big investment, a lot of time to get a lot of details right, to have some strict regulations. So this is, will comply with CD3 zoning code. So we're not requesting, you know, a PUD or anything specific with this application. I think tonight, again, would favorably ask for your support and your recommendation as this moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are we doing it as a RS10? They started before the ordinance process, or are we doing it to CD3?
It's an automatic conversion to CD3, yes, sir.
Being this is an annexation, they would have to present then the development plan that would have to conform to CD3, correct?
That's correct, yes, sir.
But, all right. So we're learning more about this.
Yes, sir. Without the PUD, so the PUD is requiring or locking in some things. A plat would do the same thing, but this is just rezoning in itself. So when the preliminary plat should have moved forward, a preliminary plat would have to adhere to the CD3 standard.
How does the CD3L? Real quick.
It's just a wider lot, 2 lots per acre.
100-foot wide lots, I believe.
Yes, it's a wider lot than.
So
And
that's
no-
something they have to request?
The CD.
L.
That is not their request for the CD3.
I know, but they have to request it. We can't put it on.
That is correct.
Okay. So they could build it under the new CD3. Okay.
Yes.
What's the status? I saw wastewater's comment about obviously Pumpkin Creek and, you know, the major upgrades are going to need to be completed, but the consulting engineers are examining these areas and, you know, do we know the status of that at the moment?
I have not heard any test results from any flow rate. I know the applicant's been working with wastewater with regards to improvements that may have to
Last
occur.
week, they were still gathering data and more.
So we're still looking.
But anything we would do on that would be subject to that coming back satisfactory.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Any preliminary plat would have to demonstrate how they're going to do the infrastructure.
Mr. Keltner, the Interstate Gateway District that it's currently zoned under, that would allow, I know you mentioned that as Mr. Burnick did, the, you know, the townhomes or the higher density homes, but, you know, is that also under, you know, and forgive me, but I know out by an interstate, you know, typically, you know, I look at like Cool Springs area, for example, that's where you get your Nissan headquarters or things of that nature that come to play. Is, you know, would that Interstate Gateway District allow for any kind of future hope that some type of corporate offices or something would also go into an area such as this, or?
This particular piece of property, you would have to amend the comp plan to go down that route.
Okay.
Just speaking of that special area, one of the things we had looked at was should this development, it just so happens to be the same applicant, but looking at it under one common development theme.
It's behind that other.
Yes, sir, which has the apartments and the townhomes, and so
Mhm.
really it's filling the intent, but we just wanted to be very clear on that, and so that's why we request the applicant just remove it from that.
Gotcha. Did we remove the front piece, or did the front piece conform to the
It
interstate?
conformed, yes.
Tell me one more time about the road. Coming in under what now? Old code or the new?
That any development would be under the new.
It'd be under the new.
Yes, sir.
So the CD three
Yes, sir.
would be 50-foot lot,
65 front loaded, 40 if they're rear loaded.
40 if they're real.
And then their density is capped at the 4 per acre.
But on the concept plan here, they're presenting here, it's only showing about 200 lots, I think, on the 100 acres. I know it's just a concept plan.
Yes, sir. And the the RS10 has the equal density.
Of 4 units.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I'll break the ice here. And again, I appreciate the comments on both sides of this. I mean, I think the point about the location here being right off the interstate and sort of how this flows in with other surrounding developments that we've seen from the most recent annexation and the density where we know the cap is. This is an annexation and a rezone only, so we're not approving any site plan tonight. We know that has an opportunity to come back to where we do still have an additional check on the amount of density as it relates to the overall plan. So I would move to approve, subject to staff and technical comments.
Second.
We also have that amended to where it adds in the annexation of the road as requested by Murray County Highway Department.
Subject to also the staff's communication from the Highway Department recently regarding the annexation of the Rock Springs Road, portion of that road that abuts this development. All right.
It goes all the way
To the
to Bear Creek.
entrance. Yes, sir. Well, it's almost.
Okay. Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Mr. Hutto,
Aye.
Mr. McBroom,
Aye.
Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Pace, Mr. Goetz.
No. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item tonight, item 22-0100, Theta Pike at Columbia Rock Road. Theta Pike Estates preliminary plat request from Pentagon Reeds LP for approval of Theta Pike Estates preliminary plat consisting of 208 single-family lots at Theta Pike and Columbia Rock Road.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, this was a deferral item from your previous month that is coming in under your previous ordinance 3638. It's a 94-acre tract there that is showing 207 single-family homes with the base zoning district of RS10. That was done about this time, actually last year was when that was annexed and zoned. The deferral came from comments from the actual preliminary plat itself. We've had quite a few conversations with the applicant up until even this late this afternoon with regards to this. We are still working through some of those. So we would feel as though at this time it would not be compliant with our standards, but we are getting close to achieving that.
So this one not being compliant with standards at this time, and I believe last time it was deferred, if I'm not mistaken, by the applicant.
That is correct, yes, sir.
Okay. It sounds to me like staff is continuing to work with them on that. I think I would be apt to make a motion to defer to allow time to continue working with staff.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Mr. Hutto,
Aye.
Mr. McBroom,
Aye.
Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Pace, Mr. Goetz.
Aye. Motion's deferred. Next item, 22-0102, 4015 Trotwood Avenue, Comprehensive Plan Amendment, Rezoning, Preliminary Plan Unit Development Master Plan, request from Highland Corporation for approval of a comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning from RS20 Single Family Low Density Residential, CD3L Neighborhood, Lodge Art Character District, to a preliminary PUD master plan at Trotwood Avenue and Sunnyside Lane, being tax map 112 parcels 22 to 24.
So, Mr. Chairman, this one is under Ordinance 3638 for review. This is a 5-acre piece of land there at the corner of Trotwood and Sunnyside Avenue. They're requesting to have the comprehensive plan amendment from suburban neighborhood, which is currently zoned RS20, to suburban corridor, which would convert that to a general commercial service designation for the base district. Included inside of that, the applicant is requesting for a preliminary PUD master plan approval. So they are looking at doing a plan unit development for this particular piece of property that equates to a site plan that is demonstrating 4,577 square feet of convenience store with a fuel canopy there and toward the front. This item was heard by the architectural review team and was approved with an adjustment to the canopy columns being all brick, which is a little bit different than what's in your architectural renderings today. But just as a note, they did recommend that change.
Looking through the list tonight, and I know several people signed up for agenda items and just labeled Trotwood, so I'm going to try my best to determine which ones you're referring here tonight. It looks like first one I got is a Gail, forgive me, is it Gail Lewis, 514 Hemingway? Okay. Emily Lonsdale, or Louise Emily Lonsdale? Langsdale, sorry. Did you sign up to speak on this particular item? No? Okay. Steve Thomason?
Mayor, Mr. Chairman, rest of the Planning Commission, thank you for this time that I can speak. This will be very short. My name is Steve Thomason. My wife Connie and I have lived at 107 Sunnyside Lane, which is the corner of Sunnyside Lane and Shenandoah, and we border this property that is in question and talking about tonight. We've lived there since 1989. Connie's dad built that house back in 1976, and we moved in there after his passing in '88. I've dreaded this day for a long time. I would rather this property stay like it is, residentially zoned, with maybe 1, 2, 3 houses built on it with nice yards. That's what would work for me. But I'm living in the real world, in reality. My biggest concern all along has been the stormwater that these heavy rains produce and the threat of flooding my house due to where it sits down kind of in a valley. When it rains, I get all the water from Canterbury, Food Line, 2 nursing homes, Lutheran Church, and now the new construction next to Food Line and now a gas station. The retention pond, I think, if I've been told right, that they've built with the Food Line project right next to Food Line, I think is working and is going to be a help toward that. Bobby and Seth with Highland Oil, the developers, have been very, very accommodating and open to listening to my concern and to my neighbor, Ron Embry, and to my other neighbor down that's touching this property, Warren and Kerry Robinson. And they will continue to address our concerns, and I believe them because they're local people, and I know where they live, and I can find them. What it comes down to
is if I have to choose what's going to go there, I might win this war or this battle. And then the next thing is something I really don't want, and that is apartment houses, storage buildings, that sort of thing that is much more asphalt. I know what I'm getting this way. The last thing I want to mention, and both my neighbors next to me, on that drawing, we've added an access road, and I do not think I want that at all, because number one, it takes off a line of trees that would hide, not necessarily from me, but from my two neighbors. It would hide the convenience store and give another buffer. So we need to keep as much grass, we need to keep as much trees there, and the way they've got it drawn, it looks like it, but we don't need that road, and that's my opinion. I am concerned about the traffic, but the gas and convenience store is not bringing the traffic. It's what I've heard of tonight being talked about. This 800, 900, 1,500 homes that's being built around that area. So as far as the gas station, if that's what I get to choose, then I'm good with it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Thompson. The other that I see that signed up for Trotwood, I'm not sure if it pertains to this item, is Jimmy Duggar.
Yes, he does. Chairman, thank you for the opportunity to be here. I represent the two ladies who own this property. That's Miss Dixie Fulton Williamson and Ruth Fulton McAllister. They've been living there. This is a family farm, a family house that they've had for a number of years. We've had this property listed now since 7/1/2020. Been under contract to list the property for 20. We're in their due diligence now for the 12th consecutive due diligence month. The team of people that put this together for this activity that they're fixing to have has done a fantastic job, have worked tremendously well with the City of Columbia, and have worked really hard to make sure that the product is good. It's going to be a product for a convenience store, and also the rest of it's going to be a hybrid for a mixed development, which will be, they've promised an excellent presentation to the community. I think the entire community will be proud to have a quality convenience store and the homes that they're going to be having. Thank you for the opportunity. My clients will be very gracious to have this one moved on down the line. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Duggar. I see a Lee Bailey. I'm not sure if he was pertaining to this item as well. He left. Okay. Thank you. Mr. Gerald Vick.
Well, let me,
Oh, yes, go ahead.
well, no, so everybody, we're supposed to let when somebody calls us. Mr. Emery called me and he could not be here. And I just want to say, almost exactly what Mr. Thompson said. He is for it. He does not want the road.
Mr. Emery I believe he did call me as well. Yeah, he's expressed those same concerns pertaining to the support of the gas station, but just the extension of the road behind him, which I may come to some questions I may have for Mr. Vick and the developer.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I'm Gerald Vick with WS Engineers, Surveyors. I'm also here with Seth Banks, who's representative of the proposed ownership. I do want to say that what Mr. Duggar was talking about with the residential component, we've taken that out of the project for now because of working with the neighbors to the south and working with their drainage issues. We needed to use that land for potential detention area. So just wanted to kind of clear that up, that area over there is where we're going to end up with it, probably with a big detention pond for it.
So based on that, Mr. Vick, if I could interrupt, does that mean that you said taking it out for now? Does that mean once the detention pond goes in, I guess it's pretty much taken out for?
Right. Yeah. It'll be used for that purpose. Yeah. And then, just want to reiterate that, the owners, the road across, access road across the back was requested by staff. We added it in. The owners don't have any purpose for it, and obviously they just soon not build it if the residents don't want it. But that's at y'all's request, not at necessarily at their request. So If you want us to eliminate it, we can eliminate it. If you want us to keep it in, we can keep it in.
That may bring me to my question, I guess, pertaining to, I think some of the concerns we're also wanting to preserve some trees, you know.
Right.
I know at study session, you mentioned that, you know, there's going to be some, for the stormwater, you know, there's going to be some redesign of, I guess, the way the stormwater travels, and you mentioned the detention pond. So, you know, just to make sure that if we were to decide to eliminate that road, is there a chance that these trees could still have to go away?
Based on the way we have everything laid out now, the only thing that's really affecting the trees is the road going into place. As long as we continue with it the way that we have it laid out at this point, you know, with the road being eliminated, I don't see any reason why those trees would have to be taken out.
Unless the event of an easement being granted and down the road.
Right. And if we leave the easement on it and then the neighbor comes back and wants to do something in the future across there, then it comes back into play at that point.
Any further questions of the developer?
I would just like to make a statement to, you know, how important it is for the neighbors to come and express their opinion on these developments. I'm telling you, I was opposed to this, and I would vote no. Seeing no concerns from the neighbors, I will probably vote yes. You know, the traffic on Mount Pleasant Highway, I asked about a fence across the back, catch the debris, and so that the kids wouldn't come across their yards. And I was told that they neighbors didn't want any. So by voting to agree to this, I think we're voting the wishes of the neighborhood. So I just wanted to make that statement.
Thank you, Mr. Pace. I'm looking now, Mr. Keltner, at this Department of Environment and Conservation report here. Is this just stating that, I guess, that any streams or wetlands, this may be a question for Mr. Vick too, but it just has to conform to their requirements, I assume is what this letter's stating?
Yes, sir. Early on in this development, we made sure that the client understood that we needed to have a study done, particularly on the drainage across the back of this property, to make sure that if it was a stream, you know, it's a different set of criteria versus being a wet weather conveyance. There is a little bit on the very, very, very southwest or southeast corner that is a stream. Of course, we're not creating any impact in that area for sure.
So if this road were put in, would it, I mean, I guess it just looks kind of like a road, in the interim would just be kind of a road to a to nowhere, because once you turn into this road, you would immediately turn left to go to the gas station, and then it would just be a continuation of a road for, you know.
Right. Correct. We basically bring it into a hammerhead turnaround so that it has adequate fire access, but it's not accessing anything that we need it to access.
And it's not going all the way to the property line.
Right.
And the applicant would be willing to grant any easements along the way, you know, if need be, you know, for a future road.
You're okay to put the easement on there?
We're okay with the easement. It's the building, the construction of the road that's what we have the biggest issue with.
I think I understand staff's desire for that, but I mean, Glenn, if you want to maybe elaborate, it's just for the continuation and future development down the road, is that?
Absolutely, yes. Our access management ordinance promotes cross connectivity. We know these parcels are going to develop down Trotwood, and we're trying to get access to them without multiple cuts being requested along Trotwood.
And just in lieu of the cost associated with putting that road in, the easement would achieve that same goal, just a matter of who's going to pay for it.
It would. It's just extremely difficult in the future to force someone to build a road of that length. Normally, we try to divide it amongst the owners. I would say if you're going to eliminate the road, there needs to be an additional easement added outside of this access, probably an additional 25 foot on each side for slope and construction, because you can't construct it within the 50-foot easement without getting outside that with your equipment.
I believe, Mr. Vick, you were consulting with the
Yeah, I asked him if he'd be okay with doing an easement so that they have more room to work. Yeah.
I mean, that would just be a temporary construction easement that would exist, right, Glenn?
It would be for construction and slope, because the slope would probably change at that point, maybe from a, 4-to-1 to a 3-to-1 to achieve the road grade.
It wouldn't affect their property or their development, so that they would be okay with that.
I've got a non-engineer question, but would this slope that Mr. Harper's referencing interfere with the slope you guys are having to do for these improvements for the water, the stormwater that you're already going to be planning on? I mean, if some additional slope has to be done by putting in this road down the road, is that a decent question what I'm asking? Could the slope that you're requiring in this additional easement change the way that the water's traveling, now or as developed?
My understanding of the terrain, I would say that no, it wouldn't. It would be, it shouldn't affect what we were, because we were planning to have the road there. So, we'd still, it would take those trees out.
So you're developing it, you would be developing it on an assumption that road is going to go in.
Right.
Yeah, regardless, exactly.
Yeah. So what we have drawn now would accommodate for the road.
Gerald, how much fill are you gonna have to do back there on the backside to level that out?
I've done some initial calculations. I think that we're gonna probably be 20 feet away from those trees when we touch down.
And how big are the trees?
20, 40 feet in diameter.
Inches.
So
20 inches
diameter.
Well, 20 to 40 feet canopy in diameter. So we're going to be close to the drip line of them. I think when we touch down, we'll have to work with those.
Yeah. I guess I just point that out is to, I wouldn't guarantee those trees will survive that. I mean, the root ball is going to go exceedingly further than the drip line for a tree of that size. I mean, it would take a considerable amount of effort from the applicant to try to ensure the survival of that tree with regards to suffocating the root system out with putting dirt. We've been through this a couple of times on a few others. NHC is a prime example of it. They took great care and worked around the site a lot to keep those live, and did a lot of care after maintenance to get those to survive. So I guess I would hope that any approval of this, should the road go away, to not require these to be maintained. Don't.
Thank you, Mr. Cutler. I think that was kind of the principle behind my question would be, there's no guarantee that these trees are going to survive,
Right.
You'll do your attempts to preserve them, but there's no guarantees that they'll
Put tree protection up. But
yeah.
Do we need to add something back in if the trees die?
I mean, I'm looking at the, are there already some trees being added on the, are these additional trees that are being added?
Yes, sir.
So you're already putting some trees in as buffers?
Yes, sir. We're addressing the buffer along the back, we think reasonably, for sure.
Okay.
Yes, sir. That's a 0.8, so that's a 0.8 opacity. That is exceptionally dense there.
Okay. And y'all said it operates 5 to 11, or was it 5 to 12?
It was 5 to midnight,
12.
yes, sir.
And of course, they got to pass all the light pollution stuff.
They'll provide a photometric plan that'll show that there's no spillage of light up to, I believe it was a half candle at the property line.
If we want to do away with the road, where would you stop it? Just in a motion, do away with this.
I'm sorry, somebody coughed.
If I make the motion to approve it, and with the understanding to eliminate have a right of way, but eliminate the road, where would you want to stop? Do I need to say it?
I think what would make the most sense to us is stop it at the radius of return, where it turns from a radius to the straight section there. And that kind of leaves it as indicated that it would extend in the future, would make it easy to tie onto it.
Mr. Harper, is there any requirements of what would need to be done as far as the radius?
My recommendation would be to construct the road, but what Mr. Vick has stated would be a logical point.
I'm sorry, I think he's asking Mr. Vick, would it be like a roundabout? But I think what you're saying is it would just be a curve that would go, when you turn into this, it would just be a curve to turn up to the, just a
Right,
curve.
you would just turn to go into the store.
Yeah, just a curve, okay. Any further questions from the developer?
But, if you're gonna make the motion, I just want to say before you make the motion, I've heard from a lot of folks on this project. And again, I think this is one that has involved a lot of communication between the developers and the adjoining property owners. Commissioner Pace, I know, pointed out that not only was there nobody in opposition here tonight, we actually had some that spoke in support of it, which is somewhat of a rarity. So I think that is worth noting. I suspect that not everybody would necessarily be jumping up and down over it. So I'm sure there's some people out there that oppose it. But from our perspective, as Mr. Duggar pointed out, this property has been available and on the market now for some time, and I don't think it's our job necessarily to not allow something just because of the usage that we might not like and hold out for something differently, especially considering some of the density and housing that could otherwise be here that would create some additional issues and burdens that we've heard previously tonight. So I just wanted to applaud the developers and the adjoining property owners that have been communicating, and also the landscape plan. I think that what y'all have done, for those who might not like the usage, you've created a best case scenario for a worst case scenario for those that are opposed to the usage, because I think that the overall product here, what you see from the road, is actually going to be a net gain for the property. So thanks for being delivered on that. I know that y'all took a lot of time on the landscape piece. The addition of trees and the other landscaping buffers that are there are going to make for an overall better product. So thanks for that.
The mayor speaks a lot better than I do.
That counts for all of us.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry, no. Thank. Yeah.
We missed.
Did you sign up? I'm sorry, did I miss anyone?
Person signed up, and you moved the agenda item, therefore she had to leave.
Oh, we didn't, I'm sorry. We didn't move an agenda item, but did I miss someone that signed up? I'll give an opportunity to someone that signed up.
I did sign up.
Please come forward if you did sign up.
Your Honor, and everyone, I just wanted to, I am that dissenting voice. I'm sure it's a beautiful facility and it's probably going to be wonderful, but I don't want it in my community. I really don't see a benefit in having this in my community. For one, there are many negative things that it brings about. Noise, traffic, the chemical hazards that come from a gas station, and also the property values. Unfortunately, the properties around gas stations usually decrease in value. And you could probably look that up. Unfortunately, there's a few of us that are here that are speaking against this. But I wanted to express my disapproval of moving forward with this. Again, I don't see the benefit as a resident of Sunnyside. But I'm not the lone voice in this. I'm sorry, sir.
I was just going to ask. I don't think you stated your name and address for the record.
Sure. My name is Oscar Loud, 608 Edinburgh. Again, I think it's taking into consideration the voices of those that live in the community is probably key to this. I haven't seen the plans. I was just kind of pulled into this just recently. But I think I'm speaking for many that live in my area, in Sunnyside area.
We have families that live there, families who just moved to that area, and they have small children. Again, the traffic is always a negative, and with having small children in the area and bringing traffic, bringing more people, more noise, more things that just draw away from why people move into that community. So I just wanted to express that, and I appreciate you pulling me in.
Thank you, Mr.
Without signing on the docket there. But I just wanted to express that I am that dissenting voice in this.
Thank you, Mr. Weil.
Thank you, sir.
That being said, I think I did go over the docket, and I will close the public comments on that section now, so. Maybe to reiterate, as the mayor mentioned, I do think that, there are several things that could go on the site. With that being said, I think, I think this particular proposal is a good fit for it, and I'm going to make a motion to approve. I'm going to make a motion to grant the easements and, at the moment, eliminate the road, the continuation of the road. I do want to point out to Mr. Thomason that, that could potentially not preserve the trees that you want, but I just want to let you know that, there's a chance that those trees could still, die, throughout the process, or, but there will be some additional trees based on the plan that are being presented here today. So I make my motion to approve.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Mr. Hutto,
Aye.
Mr. McBroom,
Aye.
Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Pace,
No.
Mr. Goetz.
Aye. Motion is approved. Next item tonight, 22-0126, Legacy at Highland Estates, Site Development Plan. Request from Civil Design Consultants, LLC for site plan approval of the Legacy at Highland Estates located off Willis Way and Porter Circle. Oh, several.
We're whittling them down.
Next round coming in.
You're good.
So the next round's coming in.
No.
Oh my God, build it back up.
Do you want to take off with that one? No, read it again.
Yes, sir, I will. I
Oh,
would
you-
just, whenever you're ready.
I'm ready. I'll read it again for you. The next item we're going to discuss tonight, we had a little transition in the audience. So it's 22-0126, Legacy at Highland Estates, Site Development Plan. Request from Civil Design Consultants, LLC for site plan approval of the Legacy at Highland Estates located off Willis Way and Porter Circle.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, so this is an item that has been deferred from your previous meeting. It has been in front of you a couple of times now. This in your agenda, please note there was a revised site plan submitted by the applicant based on some comments. We've been working with the applicant this week trying to get some of those corrected. Unfortunately, based upon what we're seeing right now and how this is shown, it still will not be compliant with the zoning ordinance with regards to the tower itself. Any fallout zone with regards to that based on the roadway itself. But the adjustment is, the current request is for 44 manufactured homes within this particular piece of property on 10 acres. It is zoned manufactured home park. And we have provided the history of it. You can see some of the history and the details for a mobile home park site plan.
And based on the revisions that you said have just been being reviewed up to this week, it still does not conform to our development standards?
That's correct, yes, sir. With regards to the fallout zone of the tower.
Is it because it goes on the public right of way, Old Stone Road?
That's correct.
Well, if it doesn't conform to the development standards, I have no reason, I mean, I can't do nothing but make a motion to deny. Any other? I have a motion on the table. Does it have to be seconded before discussion?
Yes.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay. I have a second.
In regards to fall radius, we're showing what is the maximum allowed for permit out there, specifically regarding right-of-way. If there is a issue with right-of-way and that being public, et cetera, we can look and see if we just remove the right-of-way. That would bring us in compliance, would it, Paul?
We would just need to look at it a little closer, but as of basically the way, and we kind of talked about this a little bit at the study session and before this, is that you could not have a new property line within the fallout zone. So it has to be within the 125 feet fallout. There can be no property lines or structures within side of that.
Structures specifically is what I understood our conversation to be, not necessarily property lines within fallout zone.
Yeah, we discussed it just last Wednesday.
Okay.
Here.
If we take that into consideration, I understand I can't request I misunderstood what Paul had indicated to me, specifically with respect to property lines. I understood it was structures, because typically you can have structures in many jurisdictions within within the fall radius. You can't have structures underneath it, but you can have property lines, properties, et cetera, within the fallout area. This is, again, a horizontal property regime. There are no defined property lines within this development. This is one property. So from a property line standpoint, it's what we have currently parcel-wise. It stands on its own with respect to meeting the qualifications of areas, footprints, things like that, as though it was subdivided, but this is a horizontal property regime, always has been. And therefore, from a standpoint of property lines, the property lines themselves is the boundary of the property, which in its present form. We're not looking to make any subdivision whatsoever within the property. So I don't know that would, that should change things with respect to that requirement of it crossing a property line, because it's not.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. I think, staff, you're saying that based on the fact that it's a mobile home development, it's not meeting the standards set forth by the city standards, correct?
Yes, sir, based on their property line being created inside the fallout zone.
That being said, I'll stick with my motion.
Yeah, and I've previously seconded. I'll just say, for purposes of discussion, I think it's a creative argument that you're making on trying to get out of that requirement, but it doesn't seem to fly for me. I've told you once, and I'll say it again. Sometimes these developments are all about timing, and this one, again, it's come to us previously in a different form, and timing on that one in the way that it's been situated between other developments that surround it. And then now it comes to us wanting to straight zone, but still having a timing issue because at some point the cell tower was put there before you were able to develop it from a residential perspective. And so that's why I seconded the motion to deny, and we'll vote in favor. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Mr. Hutto?
Aye.
Mr. McBroom?
Aye.
Mayor Mulder?
Aye.
Mr. Pace? Mr. Goetz?
Aye. Request is denied. Next item tonight is going to be item 22-0133 Hampshire Pike mixed-use multifamily site plan development. The applicant has requested deferral on this one.
That is correct, yes, yes, sir.
Oh, yeah. And this is one then that I'll make a motion to defer as requested by applicant.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Mr. Hutto?
Aye.
Mr. McBroom.
Aye.
Mayor Mulder.
Aye.
Mr. Pace. Mr. Goetz.
Aye. That one is deferred. Next item, 22-0134, Core Spaces Preliminary PUD Master Plan Rezoning. This one is also being requested to be deferred by the applicant.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
That being said, similar to the one before, I'll make that motion to grant that deferral.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? If none, we'll call the vote on that one.
Mr. Hutto.
Aye.
Mr. McBroom.
Aye.
Mayor Mulder.
Aye.
Mr. Pace. Mr. Goetz.
Aye. The request is deferred. Next item, 22-0135, Greens Mill Steadfast PUD, Preliminary PUD Master Plan Rezoning, request from Kimley Horn for rezoning with approval of a preliminary PUD Master Plan from RS40, Low Density Residential, CD2 Rural Countryside District, and GCS, which is General Commercial Services, or CD4, to a mixed-use plan unit development consisting of 223 residential units and retail space being tax map 51, parcels 19.2 and 20.01, located at the intersection of Nashville Highway and Greens Mill Road.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, so those 223 units are being proposed on 12 acres there at the corner of Greens Mill Road and Nashville Highway. We had a lot of discussion at study session regarding the intersection and access with regards to this particular development. That is still ongoing today. We have been working with the applicant even into the evening yesterday, trying to get some, you do have that at your desk there, of what's being turned in.
Have you seen this?
Yes, sir, it was sent in today. Architectural review was yesterday on the buildings. Looking at the submittal, while we are making some strides in getting closer to something that I believe that engineering and planning both are comfortable with, the color rendering is not an actual PUD submittal. It's not does not follow the PUD checklist with regards to submittals. And we do also still have a few things that we would like to work out to where when you're looking at it, it's clean, it has everything on there, and it's not something that's subject to a lot of additional items. So at this point, we don't feel as it sits now that we would have a recommendation that it is compliant with the PUD submittal. So the original request that you have in your packet has a lot of those details, but in the effort, after hearing comments from last week, the applicant's been working to try to correct or try to adjust those based on comments, but I think time just caught up with him in trying to make some of those changes there.
But you haven't had time to study this yet.
No, sir. No, sir. And they are committing to basically doing all comments that we've been talking about with them through communication, but just unfortunately getting that into a drawing for you to look at takes a little bit longer.
So based upon that, is staff, would be more comfortable with a deferral on this one to allow more time?
For us, if you're going to be looking at a PUD which sets everything in stone, then it would be best to have it all in front of you and clean and all the dimensions and the intersection drive lanes all worked out, as well as the new building design into the L. I don't believe that was presented to the design review team.
A question I did have for the applicant, if I may.
Yes, sir.
We had ART yesterday, and I do recall the review for the architectural design review team was based off an earlier submittal. Tuesday morning, we did receive an email for the changes. However, I do not believe the changes with the L-shaped were presented before the art team shortly thereafter. Would that be correct?
And I could probably help clarify if you wouldn't mind showing the exhibit that we sent on the screen real quick. There will be a slight change to what was approved. What you're looking at here is the elevation facing Nashville Highway that has the commercial use on the ground floor. And if you go to the next slide, that is the L shape that extends kind of parallel to Greens Mill Road. Actually, it might be the next slide. Well, the building is going to grow a little bit along Greens Mill Road. For all intents and purposes, it will be this building that was approved, and the part that grows is actually the residential piece, not the commercial. So I don't believe it should impact the commercial architectural review that was conducted this week.
Okay.
In essence.
So I think what we need to do at the staff level, sit down and just reiterate what was shown to the ART board and also what was submitted on Tuesday morning. So it may have to go back before the board for review. We'll just get back with you with that information.
Okay, we'll help clarify that for you.
Thank you.
That being said, I think I'm going to make a motion to defer to allow time to continue working with staff. Maybe get some of the issues addressed from.
I have a question.
Did you sign? I'm sorry, just a question.
I never knew nothing about it until yesterday. I'm Melanie Anderson, and I live directly across the
Please come on
street.
up to the microphone if you don't mind.
Sure. I'm Melanie Anderson, and we live directly across the street. We never received any information about any of this going on. So we are completely baffled by this.
Did you see the signs by any chance?
For sale signs,
Okay.
and that was it. We knew nothing about this.
Is there signs on site for
No.
rezoning requests or anything like that? Stephen, this is not a.
No,
It's
I mean,
not
I
an
just,
annexation.
If you could just give us your email address, I mean, I'm sorry, your.
I mean, it's kind of late for that now.
We did.
Well,
we
actually,
did
motion
place.
on the floor is.
Well, we're
signs,
making a motion to defer it, so it's
which
not too
means
late.
it's coming back.
It
but
means it'll be coming back.
I
Exactly.
just, if you'll tell me what your address is, we can verify.
2424 Greens Mill, across the street. All
We
right.
can just look to see the card and where it's at. So we send out certified letters, but they do have to be claimed.
We received it today.
Okay, and I,
Yeah.
you still have ample time. No
I
matter
mean,
what they do.
word on the street has been, stuff's going to happen until we get here today and we see it pop up. And yeah, that's a bit disturbing.
Yes, ma'am. This is one step of a longer process. So there's actually several opportunities to continue to provide public input. But I do apologize. We do send them out several weeks in advance.
I understand that, but I mean, public input doesn't matter because we see that progress with the Drumright property beside us. We haven't got anywhere with that either.
I think if you have been here tonight, you've seen that public input does matter, and I kind of take that. a
Not
little
when
bit
it's just
personally.
us. It's my property affecting Drumright and nobody
So,
else.
As stated,
So-
you'll have an opportunity with it being deferred, so to come next month. I did make the motion to defer on that one. No, have a motion to defer.
Second.
Now, second, any further discussion?
I just say
No,
something quick.
no, I think we're good, thank you.
It's actually my backyard.
Okay, and you'll have an opportunity at next month if it comes back for next month for that. Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Mr. Hutto,
Aye.
Mr. McBroom, Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Pace, Mr. Goetz.
Aye. That motion is deferred. It'll be on next month's agenda. Next item tonight is going to be item 22-0161, DAB Subdivision, preliminary plat request from TKC Engineering and Architecture LLC for preliminary plat approval for alternative cluster development of DAB Subdivision at tax map 93, parcel 3, and tax map 72, parcel 65, located off Bear Creek Pike and consisting of 428 lots.
Up to you here. Yes, Mr. Chairman. So this is a Rs10 zoning that you are reviewing it under your previous zoning ordinance 3638. That plan has been slightly modified since the original staff report was done on that. So this is for a total of 413 lots. During the study session, there was discussion with regards to the number of lot types. And they have provided that. What they're showing is 319 50-foot wide lots, as well as 94 75-foot wide lots. As you stated, this is a request for it to be an alternate development, which essentially means that the base zoning district of RS10, the site standards for that have to be applied on all of the perimeter areas, which they have demonstrated on their preliminary plat. And then on the interior, they're allowed to deviate from that as long as they take any reduction of lot sizes and supply that in open space, which is what they have also done, which equated to about 12 acres of additional open space and lot differences. So there again, this is a preliminary plat that's being reviewed under Ordinance 3638.
Mr. Cutler, this is not an annexation, it's already been annexed, and already zoned RS10, but this is a request for a cluster?
Yes, sir. Alternate cluster, yes, sir. Alternate development, yes, sir.
So is that a change, it's not, is that a change?
It's a form of development. You have conservation subdivision, you have the alternate clustering, and then you also have just a conventional subdivision. The difference being the conservation subdivision requires at least 50% of the land to be dedicated in open space. The clustering, as we just demonstrated, allows for the outside to be traditional standards. The inside can fluctuate as long as they have the trade-off and open space given. And then the conventional sticks to just the 75-foot wide lot at 10,000 square feet.
And does the zoning ordinance allow by RS10 the cluster to occur? Or is that based on this commission's approval?
It is based upon this commission's approval upon the review of the reasons why for a cluster development. And that is listed in 6.39 in your staff report. It should be on page 2, I believe. Four items that are on site. Yes, right.
Which one was it called?
Page 2 on your staff report, at the very top, it talks about compatibility, and it lists out section 3.9, alternative development clustering. And then in the bullet format are the review items.
Mr. Kellner, I just had a technical question on this. I know we hear a lot about number of approvals, residential approvals that have been or that we've seen in Columbia, Spring Hill, all over the county. That number on what they're doing here density wise, I mean, that would have been probably included in from when we approved at City Council in November 2021, right? I mean, we've previously reviewed the annexation, and we've previously approved the rezoning, and so it was probably then that 429 or whatever the density is would have been included in that. Would you say? I mean, it's hard for you to know that, but I mean,
yes, sir,
this is essentially something that we've already reviewed as a commission and as a council from a rezoning perspective and an annexation perspective, and now they're coming back with their preliminary plat to show how they're going to lay it out.
Yes, sir. So the concept would have demonstrated an estimated number of lots that could have been done on that particular piece of property. The differences between the concept and this, the concept was laid out more in a traditional form, and then they're requesting now an alternate form.
Right, the cluster. What was do you remember?
No, sir. That's what I do apologize that I don't recall the number on the concept plan. Cole, do you happen to remember what you had demonstrated?
We'd met, so I'm Cole Newton, TKC 2004 Carmack. Good evening, commissioners. You know, we'd done a couple different ones. We came in, we're somewhere in the 340, 350 range on the concept that came in with the rezone that came through in December. And I don't know, Paul, if y'all looking at this, so I mean, you know, we came, I don't rehash everything went through in the study session, but we had your comments regarding exterior lots. And I think Glenn, you had another couple of comments on the roundabouts. We did resubmit last Friday, so density's lower. We dropped a few units, and we updated everything per the comments that came out of the study session. And we also did a layout that was so I mean, when we looked at you started looking at this really hard, I guess, about this time last year, and then again in January when it started to become more of a reality. You know, we do have a gridded option that gridded it out and has the same lots, 405, 410, somewhere in that range, that was truly gridded. And then we started trying to come up with a way to get the density that we could get under the normal code, but add a little more uniqueness to it. And I think Commissioner Goetz, I think you made the comment asking about how many lots were 50, how many lots were 75. So we added that table as well. So I mean, we do have a really broad range of lot sizes. Some of them are 50, and some of them are 75 plus, and then in the middle we've got 60s, 62. I mean, frontages on the.
Yes, sir. You know what page that is? I guess I'm looking at what they're looking at as well.
So it's page 3.1, and we brought the thumb drive up. So I mean, on Friday, I know Glenn and I talked about it on the phone. I've got a copy of it I can pass around.
The plan in the document is labeled as.
Yeah, so
resubmitted.
that plan was updated and submitted back to you on Friday. And the only thing it really had was the question that addressed the lot frontages to show that we're not just putting in a lot of small lots. We've got 103 that are 75 plus. We've got 147 that are 50, and between 51 and 74 feet is 160 lots. And a lot of those are 60 and 65 foot frontages. But that was the goal in the conservation was the cluster was to provide open spaces that were usable. We've got some really large open spaces. We got at least 3 open spaces within a quarter mile of each lot, so it's easily walking distance. And then there's pocket parks throughout, providing almost 2 miles in trails.
To the earlier question, our development map has it as 500 units.
The concept. Are you seeing the table breakout?
I didn't see it.
I'm not
saw.
seeing it.
I didn't see it on the website, but we did turn it in on Friday. But I mean, we can look at it. We can.
Yeah, item 3.1 on what I'm looking at.
That's not it. I mean, I've got it. I mean, the only thing that changed again was. Paul, can I come? You want me to walk up there?
If you'd give it to Melissa, if you don't mind.
Yeah, the numbers I was quoting actually came from your first page.
So that changed based on we kind of about based on printed up around on grids. Commissioners had a comment.
While that's going around, Paul, I know Mr. Cole mentioned, the cluster was to preserve some green space, but even under the Rs10 zoning, there'll be some preservation requirements of green space, correct?
Yes, there is a percentage of open space within the Rs10. It's
There is, and so I mean, I think
7%
yeah. So it would be. So we're offering 45 acres of open space, what we consider 29 of it to be usable, and so at 150 acres would be something 9 acres or 7 acres would be what is required. So we're providing a lot more, and we're hoping to keep a lot of that in trees and work with trails in those areas.
Without this being a PUD, Paul, what kind of like trails and stuff mentioned? I mean, those are types of amenities that this commission really doesn't have any say in what's being put in. Is that correct?
You would with the alternate clustering. So the alternate is, as it sounds, is actually not a guaranteed right, but it's something that you'll have to vote on that you agree to those items that we were talking about in the review criteria, and that the way it's set up, it locks it in as opposed to just a traditional where they can show it, then come back later, revise it. This one's a little bit more, has more teeth in it.
So that being said, does this that we're looking at here today have those amenities and things of that nature that I didn't see necessarily?
You're talking referring to you're talking about just the walkways and the
just walkways and things of that nature that I think Mr. Cole's referencing, that he was wanting to by doing an alternative cluster, you're preserving this open space, this acreage you're talking about, and putting some amenities and things there. It's not something that we're necessarily seeing here today. Is that correct?
No, it's on there.
Oh, it is.
We're showing the trails and the pocket parks in there now. I mean, we've got the almost 2 miles of trails shown that we would put in with the as the phases go. And I mean, again, the usable open space, we think we've got some really good big spaces that are open, and lots of different product type are hopefully be available to go in here because we do have the different lot frontages throughout the whole subdivision.
I apologize, Cole, for not having that on there. We just talked about this at study session, that it was becoming increasingly difficult for us to track this number of projects and submittals coming in and going, and but unfortunately, I don't believe that made it into their packet today with regards to what changes you have.
I mean, but the changes were pretty minor in the sense, I mean, it took us about 2 days to do them, but it was minor in the sense of it was just that section of lots you had a question on.
The numbers of frontages?
Yeah, that one section that I thought was interior and you said was exterior.
Okay.
So we went down four right there, and then the comment that Glenn had regarding emergency turnarounds. We had the emergency turnarounds in there per one detail, but the staff had wanted it in there under maybe that makes them more permanent because you never know when those other developments will come in. We did that, and then the comment was from a commission member, I believe it was how many are 50s, how many are 55, 60, 65, 75s, and we provided that breakdown on that back page. And then if you look through the plan, I mean, every lot is dimensioned as well, but I mean, that takes time to look at, but I mean, so we do have quite a range of lots. I mean, especially as you pull in, all those are rear loaded lots. You know, that boulevard coming in, we're offering to put a median in and put trees and as you come up that, and then all those lots will be rear loaded off that until you get further into the development.
The horseshoe that's kind of close to Bear Creek Pike, kind of buffer will there be? Is this the part that's got a bluff up there? This one, am I thinking of the same place?
It does on the opposite end. On the end where you're talking about, it does not. It kind of lays down flat. I mean, that's almost 100 feet from where we're showing that lot out to the right of way.
Yeah,
so it's
from
quite
the back property line to the right of way.
Yes.
Was that the one that had the two cul-de-sacs and we suggested connecting those?
Yeah, but that is the plan. Y'all have a connected plan. We didn't do that on the last go. That was out of tech meeting, I think.
Okay.
Yeah. The only things that changed on the plan from what y'all saw at study session is those three things.
Okay. So I see so what you're saying is that out of the 413, I believe.
409 now though.
409 where you lost a couple on the perimeter right there. 147 would be 50-foot wide. 159 would be between the 51 and 74, and then 103 would be 75 plus.
That's the way it lays out. And so, I mean, we're asking for your support. We think we've put a good plan together that provides a lot of different options for house types throughout, a lot of open space that we feel like is very usable, and the opportunity to preserve some of the landscape that's out there.
We zoned this as RS10, just not RS10 conservation, but RS10.
Yes, sir, it is.
And then they come in and decide if they want to try to do conservation, right?
Our alternate clustering, yes, sir.
Alternate clustering. So what happens is when you get in there, I mean, I don't know, Cole, I'm just trying to.
Right.
Sometimes I play the devil's advocate, as everybody knows.
Yeah.
Once y'all got in here and decided we can't make this work as RS10, so that's when they do the conservation?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, you could make it work. I mean, I think we've seen some neighborhoods in Columbia that make it work. We could grade this sucker from lot line to lot line, and you could grid it out, and you could get more density than you could go up near what Glenn's saying, near the 500. But I think we looked at it a number of ways. I mean, I feel like when we looked at it, at least we've tried to see try to think through, a subdivision's going to go here. What's a subdivision I would want to live in? What's a subdivision the developers and the people that are involved are? And I mean, everybody wants more lots, but I think we've cut back on lots quite a bit from where we started at maybe in March when we did an informal submittal, and then sketch plat, and where we are now. And for me, it's the lot type that we're able to provide throughout, right? If we went straight RS10, everything would be 75-foot frontages, and we'd have to square everything up. Everything would be gridded all the way back, and you would have, I don't know, in my opinion, no uniqueness to it. I think we're providing, as you pull in, you've got alley loaded lots that are deeper, and some are wider and narrower as you come in. And then as you go through the different turns in the neighborhoods, I mean, when you step out your streets, you won't be able to look straight down and see a grid. I mean, it'll should be a neighborhood people could ride their bikes in and be parts of different communities, as we have open space, kind of little pocket parks spread throughout. And then, I think looking at walkability, you have larger open spaces, which are, larger than football fields and quite a bit larger, and even 5 or 6 acre spaces that are able to walk in trails that are all within a quarter mile of a front door. I mean, I think that was what we tried to do. I mean,
But you've got some 50 by 100 winning, or no, there's some are 50 by 100. Some of these back-to-back, are they?
Some of them are close to 5,000.
Yeah. So when you walk out your back door, I know you can throw the football and hit the other.
Yeah, I mean your backyard would be small.
I mean,
small.
we're almost from here to that wall. So they get. I mean.
Yeah. I mean, so to make it work, we need, like, you know, to be able to have that uniqueness, and what I consider uniqueness, the roads that turn, the open spaces.
Oh yeah, you don't have any straight roads, so traffic shouldn't be.
Yeah, I mean,
kids should not be going 100 miles an hour. Maybe down that one. Well, that one straightaway is going to be bad. Your main one going at Red Hawk.
Yeah, well, we do have a median. We provide a 70-foot right of way on the entry, and that's all medianed off. So you've got a median that runs all the way to that first intersection. We're hoping, you know, the plan is to landscape the median and landscape we have to the street trees.
They will fly, because you won't have a stop sign at that intersection. I mean, you won't stop traffic going in. They will fly down there. We run into a problem in our subdivision.
So I mean, it's.
But everywhere else you do, you're right.
I mean, we've tried to put turns in and provide open spaces that we think are usable. I mean, so a lot of those small lots that you're talking about open up to an open space. Now, there's a couple of them in the middle that don't, but you see that cluster there on the plan north where you've got that cul-de-sac that opens. I mean, that's open space between all those lots open up there. I mean, you have open space to be able to get into those from the right-of-way as well. But those people's backyards, even though the lots are small, it could have, depending on, you know, how they live, how each individual lives, but it could have the perception of having more yard there than you really do because there is that open space you're backing up to. And that's kind of the character throughout most of, you know, minus a couple of the roads on the interior, everyone, we're trying to back up to some on the small, and then everybody's within really close walking distance of a lot of open space.
So this sidewalks can all be required in this, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we're showing the side. We're showing it all per the new engineering standards.
Yes, sir.
So we got 65-foot right of ways, and we have 50-foot right of ways, and then we provide the 70, and then we've got the alley right of way as well for those rear loaded lots.
So aside from the alternate cluster, it's conforms to the standards.
Yes, sir.
So I would ask on the horseshoe again. Is there any way to get an increased buffer, like a 0.8 or something of opacity, you know, between it and Bear Creek Pike, you know?
Yeah, I don't have the plan. I didn't bring an extra one, but if we can put it back up there, I can take a look. Or you just hand it across. I mean, I think we can meet whatever. I mean, if that's something that we need to. Yeah, we've got the space because we're that wouldn't be a problem. We've got the space. We're providing the Duck River new alignment there along the frontage, and then we've got plenty of space to put that in there. So if that's something commission would like to see, something we can take into account, sure.
This is based on Rs10, and you know, so I know it's an alternative cluster, but it is going to preserve, you know, the green space, and you're putting in the improvements there, right? So if you agree to that, additional opacity there, I think I'll make a motion to approve with that addition, and subject to any staff or technical comments on that. So.
We would agree with that motion.
Second. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
We're bumping the limit on services, right? Cobb, I mean, the fire chief, he said he's right at the limit.
He last time I had talked with him, he said he doesn't believe that he could support anything farther east than this right.
And Public Works, they don't have a problem all the way out there getting dump truck. I don't remember seeing.
No,
Mr.
sir.
Dwyer hadn't said anything.
No, sir.
I'm through.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Mr. Hutto,
Aye.
Mr. McBroom,
Can you skip?
Mayor Mulder,
No, I'm kidding. You can't do that.
Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Pace, Mr. Goetz.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thanks a lot, Commissioners.
Next item, 22-0169, MSC Apartments Columbia PUD revision. Request from CSDG for MSC Apartments Columbia Plan Unit Development revision concerning amenities at 2741 Carters Creek Station Road.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, so this was a request to revise the PUD, but just with regards to the actual walking trail itself. The applicant came at study session and discussed the challenges they've been having with doing the trail along the southwestern portion of that, which in your staff report, you can see that in red on the site plan with regards to meeting the ADA compliance that they are wishing to do. So they've offered some alternative areas to actually add more of the walking area. During study session, it was agreed upon to remove the ones at the north and actually run it up and down Old Nashville Highway there in front. And I don't believe, Kevin, we did not get a revised that illustrate.
Yes, it's in there.
Is it? Okay.
Mhm. It's up above like one of the.
Staff report.
Is
I
it
just
right
want-
here?
Okay. So he did, so Joe did turn that in, showing that new area that was a trade-off from the study session there. So that's exactly what you were referring to during study session.
Is that what you're talking about, Paul?
Yes, sir. So if you'll notice, the blue line is now to the right. It runs with Old Nashville Highway and intermingles in between the units as opposed to being along the very north portion behind the garage unit itself.
I'll make a motion to approve it. That's what I wanted to begin with.
I may have just one question on it. Well, I maybe should wait until a second before I. Second. All right. Motion and a second. Is the applicant here on that one? And this is probably trivial, but the one to the south where it ends, I guess, at the sidewalk, is there an exit? Will there be like is that where everybody would come out of their units, I guess is what I'm asking, or should
Yeah,
that sidewalk continue just a little bit further?
That's the breezeway location. We look to bring it around the south end of that building, but we have a sanitary sewer pump station of all our water meters at that location.
So that's the
we
breezeway.
couldn't physically get it around the south end of that building.
Okay. Thank you for listening to us at the study session. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
That being said, we had a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, call the vote.
Mr. Hutto,
Aye.
Mr. McBroom,
Aye.
Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Pace, Mr. Goetz.
Aye. Motion passes. Let me see where I'm at now. Next item is 22-0170 Columbia at I-65 Townhomes, preliminary plat. Request from Martin Engineering and Surveying for preliminary plat approval of Columbia at I-65 located off Harley-Davidson Boulevard and consisting of 300 units.
So, Mr. Chairman, this is a piece of property there that had originally received a preliminary plat approval for this piece of property last year following the rezoning and annexation of it in 2020. They are coming back with a plat to supersede that, which includes 300 townhome units. They're located on the 46 acres that is at the end of Harley-Davidson Boulevard that runs parallel with I-65 on that. The zoning is compatible for the townhome itself, and should this preliminary plat move forward, it would come back to you in phases for the final plat.
So what was the plat that was previously approved?
Previously, it was a more of a mixture. There were some single family as well as townhome.
And now we're getting rid of the single family?
That is correct, yes, sir. And this is being reviewed under your Ordinance 3638.
Old ordinance.
Yes, sir.
Gotcha. I believe that the applicant or representatives here.
didn't have any questions at study sessions, I recall.
Yeah, none. I just out of curiosity, I know everything conformed from the study session. I guess I just maybe overlooked from the design change from getting rid of some of the single family. Any explanation or just?
I think from the layout, from where you're looking at how it moved in there and how we're trying to reshape the commercial. As you may recall, on the preliminary plat, we had some commercials going to be on that, I guess, western side. We moved that more towards that front. You may recall that parcel that's kind of zoned out in the gray in there, waiting for that to be able to come available. And then we'll move in probably commercial in that area, so make it more compatible with the new design.
On the original design, do you remember the mix of as far as number of units from residents?
I don't recall. That was, yeah.
Yeah, please come forward.
Okay, sorry. So I'm Gary Martin. I'm the applicant, engineer and developer. So the original design was for the entire property. It had more units. There were probably about 200 single family and about 115 or so townhomes. But when you look at the MRC zoning and you look at what makes sense at the interstate, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 homes next to the interstate doesn't make sense. Builders don't want to do that. And multifamily mixed with, some office buildings, self-storage. We've already got people wanting to have office space there. Even if you read MRC, I mean, it talks about a lot of uses, but I think it really, the way I see it as a developer and a planner, is that it just makes sense to have a good mix, mixed-use development with retail and commercial. Single family just doesn't really fit there, right next to the interstate.
So your total number of units is relatively the same?
It is, because the traffic study was done for the previous development, about 315 units. We just went in at 300 to make sure we were under that, so, yeah. And, you made a comment earlier about, I think it was the last project, Dabs, talking about, I'm sorry, I got a little bit of something in my throat here, but, straight zone developments, typically, you don't really find a lot of guidance or requirements in the regs. Paul could speak to that more. I mean, it talks about showing pedestrian walkways and this and that. So we, on this development, have like about $1.5 million worth of amenities. We've got about 2,000 or 3,000 feet of walking trail, a clubhouse, pool, 3 dog parks, lots of dispersed parking, which is required. But and we have a colored amenity drawing. I don't know if you have that in front of you, but that shows that pretty well. In addition to just seeing the black and white preliminary plat. But yeah, there you go. And the open space here is like, typically a townhome development would go into like an RM1 kind of zoning, which max density is about 12. And I think this is 300 units in 40 acres. That's about, what is that, 7 for us? About 7, a little over 7 units per acre. So we're well below what typically would be required for like a high density, like we could put apartments there. We considered that. Apartments, typically you can get 12, 13, 14 units per acre. And apartments would have been a nice fit for this, but I don't like to deal with apartments, So anyway, any more questions?
I have none.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Do we have a copy of the amenities? I mean, what they look like?
You don't, not in a straight zoning, no, sir.
You don't have to?
No, sir. The amenities is actually not a requirement, just open space percentage.
Well, how do we make sure they get done? We don't?
It's their election.
So they can't fall back on us like they did those people in Spring Hill? I mean, what I'm saying is, the thing gets done, the amenities hadn't got put in.
Yeah, no, it's not a requirement.
It's not. Well, how do we know the amenities get put in, Gary?
Excuse me?
How do we make sure Wes, how do we make sure the amenities get put in?
Well, first thing is,
What's that?
It's on the
Paul said it didn't have to be on the plan.
They don't have to.
It's on the plan.
Yeah,
We had, I'm sorry, we had the option under straight zoning not to show any of this, but to show you what
That's what I'm
complies.
getting. I just want to make sure it gets done.
Yeah, and I do too, because that's what I want.
But what we've run into is people they're having this right here. I mean, we don't know what it looks like though.
Where have you run into that?
It doesn't matter where I said.
No, but you said
We've had people show us a rectangle and then they got a real beautiful picture of another clubhouse over here and a pool. I mean, we don't know what it's going to look like, and I want to make sure that people in here, since you show it, when they move in, all of a sudden they're coming to the city. We're not getting what we were shown we were going to get. How do we just make sure that happens? I mean, you said you're going to do it. I mean, you got to have a plan or something. Could that be attached?
That's the plan right there.
I don't see what it looks like. I just see a pool with I see four boxes.
What's your question?
What's the pool? What's the clubhouse and the pool going to look like?
Paul, can you tell him what's required?
You just said it's right here. All right, I see it's right here. Then you got up. I mean,
Mr. Martin, do you have any illustrations at all? of
any
them?
illustration?
There are no illustrations required for this.
Understood.
Okay.
The question,
That's right.
if you don't
That's
have
what
any.
I'm asking. How do we? You're saying what's here. You have to do it.
Would you like to answer this?
just briefly, Randy, and I appreciate the question. I understand your concern. 'Cause I remember when I was on there, that's something we want to make sure too. Generally speaking, like this required, it's not required under the straight zoning. What we're trying to do is put in a good product for this council to consider, this commission to consider, and that's what we intend to put there. Is there any follow-up? No, there's not any follow-up that's required. So unfortunately, there's no way for the planning commission or the city council to do that. But this is not only development. We've got several developments, and you're going to take it on trust. We're going to get it done. It's not required. Now, maybe under the new regs, haven't looked at those yet. It may be required, but it's not. If y'all want, drawings and things like that, we might give you those when we get farther on in the process. But again, I don't think it's something required. I don't think it's a
I know,
consideration.
I understand it's not required, so the people buying at their own risk.
Technically speaking, yes.
All right.
Just like any other, I mean,
All right, as
Yeah.
long as we all understand, they're
Yeah.
buying at their own risk.
yeah.
Okay.
And as long as we also understand, no, it's not a requirement, so I don't know if it's reason to.
Oh, I understand. I mean, I was told it's there, but then now I'm told they're buying at their own risk. They didn't have to go there. It's just an illustration.
Correct.
Right.
And you wouldn't have any designings or anything like that. If it was a PUD, to be a different story.
Oh, I know exactly. Somebody just said, it's gonna go in.
Yeah. And like I said, I've been there before when they're coming, oh, well, they're going to put this clubhouse in, and it looks like a bad clubhouse. But again, people can be buying with the clubhouse, and, if you want to sell your places, you're going to have them in there.
No problem.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant. And just to clarify again, Mr. Keltner, this is a straight zoning request, conforms to the zoning, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
That being said, straight zone request conforming to the zoning, I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Mr. Hutto,
Aye.
Mr. McBroom, Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Pace, Mr. Goetz.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Next item, 22-0171-1112 Tom J. Hitch Parkway. Comp plan amend annexation with plan of services rezoning. Request from David Slocum for a comprehensive plan amendment for special area 3 overlay into urban corridor annexation with plan of services and rezoning of 319.51 acres to RS6, single family medium high density CD3 neighborhood character district, RM1 high density residential, which is CD4 general urban character district, and GCS general commercial services, which is CD4C general urban corridor character district at Tom J. Hitch Parkway and Iron Bridge Road, known as River Bend, being portion of tax map 90, parcel 30, and tax map 99, parcel 11, 148.41 acres to RS6, 94.9 acres to RM1, and 76.12 acres to GCS, general commercial.
Yes, sir. You said it well. There's not a whole lot for me to say after you said all of that.
It's a lot to read.
But to just recap a little bit what the request is, on the 319 acres, there is a request to amend the comprehensive plan on a portion of it, which I believe is 76 acres there. from urban neighborhood, which is what it currently is, to urban corridor in order to support the commercial request for this particular piece of property. As you kind of alluded to there's a division of CD3 and CD4 also being requested in there at regards to the 148 for the 3 and 94 acres there for the CD4. We have included in your staff report the breakdown of those. On your page 2 is where it starts, talking about the different characteristics of each zone that's being requested. As well as we did go ahead and after study session, we included a map that you can see in your agenda. It's the very first one under supporting documents that shows the corresponding zoning districts with regards to how it breaks out inside the property there. So starting at the north, you have a section of CD4C. As you keep moving south, you have a CD4. And the meat of it in the middle, you have a split, so you have more of a strip of 4C. To the west of that is the CD3, and then as you cross the road there, you have another section of CD4. The applicant has provided a concept showing single family and some commercial. We did note that the concept would not match the new zoning ordinance 4400. But it is just a concept and just wanted to make the note of that. Technical comments are also in there if you need to see those. Unfortunately, I see Randy here. Unfortunately, we did not see anything from Murray County Highway Department on this one. School systems did not have an issue with this one. There will be substantial improvements to the water system in order to have water brought into this well.
Same comments from wastewater about the upgrades that need to be made on.
Yes, sir.
So this is one of the first ones we're going to look at under the new ordinance, new zoning ordinance, as far as annexation.
Well, you have a few that are going through that are automatically converting over.
Right.
Yes,
Just from the first one. So
This
seeing
one's
it
starting
here
right out of the gate.
with a CD3 and then the CD4 out, I guess my first question, Mr. Keltner, is that kind of reverse of what would you want the higher density closer to the hub and as it gets further away as it expands from downtown Columbia, if you will, or from our hub, then.
Well, when you look at this particular piece of property, it has a lot of potential to be in a way, its own community as well as contributing toward the downtown if done correctly. There was some discussion with regards to Tom Hitch Parkway being a 2-lane road, having more of a strip commercial effect to it. There is some pause there of how is that road going to be widened and who's going to pay for the widening of it? Kind of comes into play. Traditionally, if you want to see a mixed use type development, this one is mixed, but it's very compartmentalized in the mix. Traditionally, you would see the mixtures kind of integrated into the development itself.
Not just subdivided.
Not necessarily being segregated out.
Now, I know our new plan is, I guess, not necessarily we're reducing the PUD designation, but with a PUD, we would see as a whole, this project, this is a great corridor, if you will. I mean, so this is a good example of what could be amazing with a PUD right here.
Yes, sir. And it can still be that way.
Right,
Um,
I'm not
with the straight
suggesting
zoning,
that,
yes,
yeah.
sir. Mhm.
But it's hard to, because CD4C could be commercial, but it could also be apartments. It could be
That's
also
correct.
high-density residential. I mean, just straight zoning would allow so many different things in those areas.
And the 4 would require a commercial component to be within it, at least 15% of that would have to be commercial inside of. So it still has the capabilities of doing it.
Mhm.
But there are just a few things that make you look at it and wonder about the overall picture.
But then this is also just one of numerous concepts that could be there. It's
Yes.
not,
Yes, sir.
it's not even a preliminary plat. There's no telling what they may come back with once things are
Right.
zoned or annexed.
Yes,
And it, with a lot of input, it could be a lot more like a lot better integrated rather than have these separate zones with.
Yes, sir, that is correct. That's one of the good things about the ordinance 4400. It does allow for a lot of flexibility of use inside of it to create.
But with the straight zoning, it also allows for possible limited in to what is there. Am I right? I think.
We are relying heavily upon the standard, so this is a very descriptive type of ordinance. Site setting, the architectural features are very described, so there's a little bit more certainty as you may be perceiving. No matter which direction it goes, there are standards put into place as opposed to what you had previously.
The straight zone wouldn't have had that at all.
That's correct. Under your previous ordinance, pretty much didn't have any of that. This is a little bit, the new ordinance is better defined in with regards, so if it does go to apartments, it's very clear in how those apartments have to sit and what they look like.
Right. But based on the size of that CD4C, it could all be, I mean, I know the new ordinance requires based on a certain number of acreage, it has to be mixed, but based on that particular size, it wouldn't necessarily dictate that it would have to be mixed. It could be all.
Yes, sir, yes, sir, in a way, but so in a 4C, say that it was elected to be apartments, inside that 4C at 10 acres, and actually there's another caveat that any combination of parcels that are under a common development theme that equal 10 acres. So pretty much anything in here is going to have to meet the mixture type that we're referring to a little bit. So if they were to go to apartments on any portions of that 4C, at least 15% of that would end up having to be a commercial.
But I think what you might have been alluding to with all that thoroughfare going down Tom J. Hitch being the commercial, it could potentially require several entrances,
Yes, sir. We would definitely be looking at limiting the entrances for sure. If it maintains into the county road network system, they would have to be the ones approving any connections into that as well, as far as limiting number. But my original statement was regards to just integrating the commercial deeper within some of the CD3 area or within some of the CD4, which has the opportunity to do it. The CD3 is the only area that would be a limiting in that, more limited commercial uses you can do.
The 4C and the 4 both allow townhomes. 4 has less commercial available in it. 4C, is that correct?
The allowances of uses are very similar. The difference is the size of building. So the 4 is going to be a smaller size. It has a cap on the size commercial building, which I believe is 20,000 square feet. But whereas the 4C opens it up to much larger buildings.
No comment from county on the road?
I do not. I don't know if you wanted to or not. I may not feel comfortable to. I got a response that they were evaluating it back when technical was had, but we have not had any follow-up after that.
what's the likelihood that they may ask or request annexation of that road?
I would say high.
Yeah.
If I had to guess.
In which case, the developer would have to consider that as to get the road up to specs with being a city road.
It's, let me back up. It's not that the road is in poor condition. It's that as you add in that commercial. So when the comprehensive plan was looked at, the reason why it went neighborhood was because of limiting factors, because we're looking at the major transportation thoroughfare plan as well as land uses and trying to make the two work without requiring a lot of infrastructure improvement. With Tom Hitch being a 2-lane road, and if I understand correctly, there is some more right of way there to widen it. It pushed it toward that neighborhood. So once you go into the commercial side, just as any traffic improvement, somebody down the line, you would need to see if we're going to take this commercial route, understand what James Campbell looks like, understand it's 4 lanes and things of that nature. Your corridors coming through the middle of town, they're 4 lanes, so you could potentially see this change into a different view along this stretch right here. That would need to be constructed if it goes into intense commercial use.
Would there also need to be some annexation and upgrades to Iron Bridge Road through there? Because that's outside the city. I know, sorry, county road across the city line.
Yes. Yes, there
That
is.
1-lane bridge.
The 1-lane bridge is actually something that the city's working on. We actually got permission from the county to go ahead and do our part and their part with regards to the replacement. That's in design now, I believe, right?
It's in right of way.
Okay, so we're getting closer to going out for bid on that project.
We
sounds
have
like.
construction funding secured for that one as well.
Good, good.
But all the road stuff will come to us during the preliminary plat, right? All the road changes.
It would come at, your impact is where it's going to start looking. And unfortunately, what we've seen is with some of the other developments is that it's going to continue and then it's going to hit a point where, okay, now, sorry, you're the trigger guy. You got in. The other ones before you didn't have to require it. Now you're here. You've hit that threshold of bigger improvements have to be made on the road. Am I saying that correctly, Lynn?
Yes, a development of this size, though, with the traffic impact study, will probably identify many improvements and have those phased appropriately as the track develops.
Is there anyone here on behalf of the developer?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Excuse me. My name is Jim Parks. I'm one of the property owners with our family and another family, the Lewis family. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. I had comments, but lengthy meeting tonight, so let's be efficient with it and try to address any questions that y'all may have. On the commercial part of it, we had initially requested a smaller portion of our property be brought in and annexed, and it is for residential development only. At the recommendation of staff, we expanded it out to the submittal that you have before you tonight. The commercial land has been studied over since Tom Hitch Parkway was built 30 years ago. We've been planning for whatever we're doing here tonight. We will retain the commercial. There is no immediate planning for commercial. It's only on the plat because of the larger land area that's been submitted. To be quite honest with you, it'll take the synergy of a residential community and potential 4-laning of the highway for the commercial to be driven by the market. So I don't think you will see any activity taking place that in the near term. Tom Hitch was built. We donated 120-foot right-of-way for a 4-lane highway, divided highway, much like Highway 31 as you see it today is what the future plan is. When that occurs, we're not here to forecast that tonight. We're just trying to work on a land plan and annexation of a property that's about 1.5 miles from your city hall tonight. The distance from here to the Murray Regional Hospital is 2 miles. You're looking at an inner core location property for the city of Columbia to extend its natural eastern boundary to Tom Hitch. Our property abuts all city limits. Our property has all utilities on site. It's been in the planning for 30 years. So we've waited 75 years of ownership to be here tonight. We're trying to advance what's required for this submittal. We do have an active project that we would like to follow suit with after the requirements of this annexation and zoning for a phase 1 single-family residential. The staff report mentioned proposed uses, one of being apartments. That is inaccurate. And I'm confused with the zoning, Paul, with the new phrases now, with the old and the new, and I've informed some property owners that we were submitting under the old ordinance, so we're being educated much like you guys are tonight. Whatever the higher density is, that is all being planned by the developer for their ownership for townhomes and cottage style detached structures. But that comes in a later phase. We're here just tonight for annexation and zoning so that they can come before you on a phase 1 submittal. So I've said more than I intended to. Let me answer any questions, Mr. Chairman, you may have.
None at the moment, Mr. Parks. Thank you for.
I will say that in closing that the Tom Hitch corridor, our property falls in line as submitted. Our planners have tried to be responsible in looking at the Columbia Connect land use plan. The Columbia land use plan states that development should include a mixture of uses, including medium to high residential density and intensity structures, attached and detached. The Tom Hitch corridor should allow for commercial uses such as hotel, restaurants, retail, office, medical, personal services to mesh with the city's inner core and to blend in with the James Campbell Boulevard. So with 1.5 foot frontage on Tom Hitch, we think it's the city and our property have a common goal, is to try to bring in some limited commercial in a strategic area on the eastern portion of the city limits.
Thank you, Mr. Parks.
Okay.
Refresh my memory now. CD4, how large a building can you put in?
What do you mean by?
CD4, the zoning for CD4. Tell me the difference between that and CD4C.
It's mostly on the commercial side. So they both allow apartments and townhomes, similar to even, the RM1 is going to allow apartments and townhomes.
But in my mind, what I was trying to get, where is the Publix and the Sam's Club gonna go here?
It would have to be 4C.
It had to be 4C.
Mm-hmm. To answer your question, yes, sir, 4C. So it's the larger commercial buildings can go in the 4C.
4C.
So think about it as the 4 is more of a transition into a neighborhood. It's the next layer outside of a corridor traditionally.
So is that a large area that we've got here?
It's 76 acres of 4C. I can run through it real quick for you on all of them.
This big tract right here in the center, that's 76 acres?
No, sir. You about the CD3?
CD4C.
CD4C, which is the yellow color, is 76 acres.
Yeah.
The CD3, which is the blue color, is 148.
Yeah.
And then the
CD4C on the up next to Bear Creek, next to the river.
well, that's total. So the CD3 is 148, the CD4 is 148, and then the CD4C is 76 total. So those two put together. And the only comp plan amendment is for the 4C. So the 4 and the 3 are already compatible with that urban neighborhood.
Was there any discussion that the northernmost CD4 district should be 4C along Tom J. Hitch just to have continuity? They can still do those same townhomes in there, but you don't have just this change of zoning, which I think could be a later frustration to develop or redevelop.
You can do a lot of the commercial uses in there.
In that CD4?
Yes, sir. Yes. It's just the difference is just, like I said, the size of building. So they could be, actually the 4C and the 4 could actually have a lot of the same uses residentially and commercially. They can be interchangeable in there. It's just at this time on a concept level, it's very hard to identify. And as Mr. Parks said, that they're retaining that portion, but they're not having anybody on contract or anything to give better detail of what's being there. But they do have somebody for the residential portion, as he has stated, which is the CD3 and the 4.
One of your initial comments, Keltner, is something about the CD4C along the Tom J. Hitch Parkway there. That can't remember what it was exactly. There was something of a concern of that zoning versus it being more as a centralized hub or something like that. What would say the strip? It's a strip there versus it being kind of configured into a larger type.
Yeah, you definitely want to see this as close as it is to downtown. You want to see it integrated in as much as possible. We have corridors already of traditional commercial, such as James Campbell, sections of 31, going from Bear Creek down to Pulaski Highway area. This is a more of a, you're going to continue over the years to see this continually build in this area, which is where we should be building, absolutely. We're very close to town, and this should be with intensity of development. But the one concern is trying to recreate a James Campbell. We should be recreating a James Campbell. Let James Campbell flourish, let it keep developing, continue to add more and more effort into that as your retail corridor. But this can be something very unique if it's integrated correct.
Yeah.
Go back to your showed the CDs there. If you had the CD4 on this end to CD4C, like Mr. Hutto said, could you still put the townhomes in there?
In the 4C, yes. You can still put townhomes in.
So would that be a better thing to do? Would that give that one more, the CD4?
You can do the commercial in the CD4.
Oh, well, I'm thinking like Mr. Pace said, the stands and the pub.
I think it's a little unusual. I understand. See,
I'm wondering which would be better for them, to go ahead and have it, and they can do everything they want, or would they have to come back? And they could always come back.
Well, just, yes, it could always come back as a rezoning for that piece of property there. But it's a little, I know after all these years of seeing things very separated out and very compartmentalized, you're now in moving forward and going, well, we have these different zones, but there's a lot of the similar uses in all of them. But yes, you can have everything in 4 residentially, which is everything from a single family home all the way up to an apartment complex. A large scale apartment complex is allowed in both the 4 and the 4C. So residentially, they're very similar. There's really no differences in them.
Which should be, that's what you do? Or
the 4C, just think of it as only where you want bigger commercial.
But he can still do anything he wants, though.
He can do the residential in the 4C, yes.
The apartments and all.
Yes.
Or just leave it like that and let you come back with a 4C if you found the ultimate commercial deal. I mean, which should it be zoned to create So he'd have less problem.
The 4C's really only going to kick in on the big commercial box. And I'm trying to think, that depth's about, was that 400 feet? I believe is what that was.
That is correct. We revised it to a minimum of 400 feet, has beyond that 600, 650 for a we don't show it here, but for potential town center location.
Yeah, outside of the corners there, which has a little bit more depth there, the 400-foot strip in the middle, it would be very difficult to put in a large-scale commercial building.
The large-scale commercial building, Mr. Pace, is planned on the very first green that you see coming across the river at 412.
The
As
northern
you get
portion.
deeper south, the advisors say that that's probably not going to be a good location for a big box. It needs to be as close to Highway 412 as possible. It does allow for a Walgreens or something at the intersection of Iron Bridge Road and Tom Hitch as the future roadways are updated and improved long-term wise. So it's been strategically laid out for some potential uses such as the commercial question has been it doesn't show here, but it's been studied out very intensely on the existing topography of the property. Our property is not a very flat property, has a lot of elevation change, and so the commercial depths and the commercial locations factor into the natural terrain as much as possible. We're here to work with the city, meaning you have a new ordinance, and we want to work under the ordinance. To be honest with you, there'll probably be a lot of ordinance changes or another ordinance brought before this council before our property is developed out. So whatever's prevailing at the time, as we bring the properties in phases, and we're not submitting as a PUD, we're planning to do this in phases so that each phase can be strategically worked out with staff and planning commission as time changes, demand changes, the market changes, the style of the construction changes. We can't predict 20 years out on what is needed. So we're trying to do it methodically and phase by phase and phase and be before you with all the details on what's being, required under a site plan approval.
And since it's not a PUD, he can always come back and change. If you see, like you said.
Yeah, we talked,
Market's changing.
we started this in December, and at the advice of the staff, we chose not to go under a PUD.
Yeah. This is exciting.
Well, after
Rare
75
piece of
years, you
ground.
hope something exciting happens. Yeah, it could be. I think it's again, we've been wanting to be here before now on Tom Hitch since it was put in. But, the market, as the mayor has said, timing is everything, and so we're here like so many others are. Again, this is this connects City Hall to Tom Hitch in a direct eastern pattern without any gaps. Your city limits is at our property line. We're going to be it doesn't make a lot of difference, and this is nothing that you can back up in writing, but our family is going to be deeply involved in this project till its completion. We're not walking away from this project. So we have as much risk and interest as you do in making sure that it starts right and it continues in that direction. We think we have confidence in the developer that we're working with that you will hopefully be introduced to here shortly, who can fulfill that and make everybody, including adjoining property owners, feel comfortable too. But we're just trying to get started. Our focus is to get phase one before you, and that's a single-family detached residential development.
Make a motion to approve.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote.
Mr. Hutto,
Aye.
Mr. McBroom,
Aye.
Mayor Mulder, Mr. Pace, Mr. Goetz.
No. Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Next item tonight is item 22-0180, Fieldstone Farms, Section 5, Phase 1, preliminary final plat. Applicant has requested a deferral on this one.
Yes, sir.
Based on that, I'll make a motion to defer.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Call the vote.
Aye.
Mr. Hutto, Mr. McBroom, Mayor Mulder,
Aye.
Mr. Pace, Mr. Goetz.
Aye. Motion's deferred. Brings us to any other business tonight we discussed?
Any other business?
Yes, sir. Just another information item following up on what Chairman Goetz had at the study session.
Oh, yeah.
I put together estimates of the estimated contribution to enrollment in public schools for each item on your agenda tonight. I'll give this to you as you're leaving.
Okay.
I didn't expect it to go so late.
Any other business?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to adjourn. Discussion, we'll call the vote.
Mr. Hutto,
Aye.
Mr. McBroom, Mayor Mulder, Mr. Pace, Mr. Goetz.
Aye. Meeting's adjourned.
Did anybody lose a pen? Give your pen.
I got my pen.
I ran out of water on that.
Thanks.
I was in here for the drum roll. They did all the boundaries and everything. When they got ready to start digging, where they did the burns and all of that, they said the grade of the land changed. They didn't do the burns. So they come right to my garage door. My garage door is 20 feet from the property line. They dug down 30 feet from the property line. That's all. There's no room for burns, trees.
I can look at it. It's been a minute.
And he said, well, the grade changed and so the plant's out.